and turn on things for... There we go. I think we're good. Oh no, camera's not working over here. Forgive me of the technical difficulties. Right now, I'm juggling like 3 different devices. It's actually kind of crazy. What's the problem here? Why am I not on? There we go. We're back. We're back. All right, guys. So we're gonna hop into the Word. So if you guys want to read along with me, I'm going to be speed reading through Leviticus. I hope this is good. Again, this is not necessarily for consumption. I know it's going to be fast. What's up, Sharad? I love you, bro. I really hope I can come back to India soon. I know it's probably going to be a long time, but be praying for me, all right? Like, in my heart, I want to come back. I really do. But starting in Leviticus 1, it says, the burnt offering, chapter 1. The Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting. He said, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any of you brings an offering to the Lord, bring as an offering an animal from either the herd or the flock. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he is to offer a male without defect. He must present it at the entrance to the tent of meeting so that it will be acceptable to the Lord. He is to lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on behalf to make atonement for him. He is to slaughter the young bull before the Lord, and then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall bring the blood and sprinkle it against the altar on all sides of the entrance of meeting. So if you guys can't tell, and if this is your first time hearing Leviticus, this is not necessarily something that is super relatable to the youth, okay? Like, Leviticus by far is what we call in ministry the Bible plan killer. Because so many people will be reading through the Bible. They can get through Genesis. They struggle a little bit at the end of Exodus once it gets to all the crazy things. But once it comes to Leviticus and it starts talking about the specifics of what God wanted, things do get a little bit messy, guys. So, yeah, just please bear that in mind. Thanks for all the love on Instagram. I see the hearts, guys. I see you guys loving it. Thank you so much. I want to shout you guys out. Shout out to Caleb. Shout out to Robert, Paranga, Jackson, Wendy. Just know I see you, okay? I see you. So let's keep reading. It goes on and says, he is to slaughter the young bull before the Lord, and then Aaron's sons, the priest, shall bring the blood and sprinkle it against the altar on all sides of the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. The sons of Aaron, the priest, are to put fire on the altar and arrange the wood on the fire. Then Aaron's sons, the priest, shall arrange the pieces, including the head and the fat, on the burning of the wood at this altar. He is to wash the inner parts of the legs. He is to wash the inner parts of the legs with water, and the priest is to burn all of it on the altar. It is a burnt offering pleasing to the Lord, made by fire, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Question for you guys. My first question. We're not going to have a lot of these because, again, we got a lot to cover today, okay? But my question for you is, would you have been a Christian back in the day? Think about that. Would you have been a Christian back in the day? Think about how different things are now. We're free. We're living in 2024. Things are chill. But what would have happened if God was like, all right, I need you to take this offering? What if God actually asked you for that right now? He was like, okay, I need you to go up. I need you to sacrifice this bull. Would you be able to actually do that? Probably not, right? Like, it's crazy to think how much was included in the faith. So I really hope you guys are super grateful for the times that we live in, that things have changed so much, and that we don't have to do the things that we used to do. But luckily for us, it is a different time, all right? So I don't want you to be intimidated by Leviticus, okay? And this actually brings me up to one of the things I've been doing, which is helping people to understand how a specific chapter or a specific book may actually be good for us 20-somethings. And for Leviticus, the specific things that we're going to be looking out for, okay? The overview is that this is a book full of laws. We have so many laws that are involved with Leviticus, but this book helps us to reflect on the intentionality of our daily actions, okay? So for anyone who's like, how can I be faithful on the daily? This book is for you. There's people right now, and I thank you so much for being here, that have probably been struggling with the faith, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to struggle. Like, if you're struggling, it means you're wrestling. It means you're still here. It would be bad if you didn't struggle. It would be bad if you gave up, but you didn't give up. Especially if you're here right now. Like, why are you here on TikTok? Why are you here on Instagram? Like, you have not given up on the faith. So the book of Leviticus is intentionally made for us to be able to get through our daily actions and how we live in community. It teaches us how to live. Now, I come from a family where my dad wasn't the most active, right? Like, I don't know my biological father. I had a stepfather, and he did a great job while he was there. But there was some time in my life. There was some time in my life when, and it's happening till this day, when my father just wasn't around that much. And what we see is that the Israelite community had a way of passing down their history. And I see you, Karanga. I was raised as a Christian, and my life would have been different, and I love my life now. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, it's beautiful, and I appreciate all the hearts. But I think about this, and it's like it's hard for us to understand like how cool the old Israelite community was. They were full of mistakes, but they had a way of passing down history. And we may not have the Israelite community, but we have the Bible, guys, okay? And the book of Leviticus is really good for teaching us how to live on the daily. We should not run away from the fact just because it's tough and it's difficult to read, all right? So what we're going to be looking for is the emphasis on the sacredness of ordinary things. Some people think that like faith has to be this beyond crazy. It doesn't, all right? Leviticus teaches us how to be sacred in our daily actions, the daily stuff, the regular things. I keep telling people here in India about how much I love the fact that I can take the metro. It takes about 2 hours of my day there and 2 hours of my day back. But it's still beautiful, okay? Like the fact that I can actually be here and I can just chill. I can stay and spend time with my girlfriend. Like the small things can be so sacred, okay? Let's make sure we remember that. Not only that, we're going to also be looking for how to create space in your life for what's important. Think about how many things you do that don't really align with what you care about. And I don't reside in India, Rwanda, but I spent a lot of time there. That was actually my first mission trip. I spent some time in India for about 3 months, and I met a great, like, I love my India family. Oh my gosh, I miss them. I have a baby sister there now, so shout out to Clara. Sure, make sure you send love to Clara from me, okay? But yeah, I love my India family. They're literally my brothers and my sisters. But yeah, we're gonna be looking for how to set intentional boundaries and how you can feel more grounded and aligned to who you want to become in your daily life. Okay. So why is this relevant? In a world where we often feel pressure to conform and perform, Leviticus invites you to think deeply about what truly matters. And I want you to think about that, okay? What matters to you right now? For all my faithful people in the chat, again, I see you, Karanga, I see you, Kim, I see you, Caleb. What matters to you right now? I know I'm speaking fast, so I'm going to slow this down a little bit, and I'm going to ask you again. I want you to actually picture this question in your head. What matters? And are you spending time on it? I know for me, I can get so busy. I've been thinking about this, that even when I lost my job, I lost the money and all this different stuff, I was so concerned. And then I'm like, I'm having to ask people for money. I'm like, hey, please fund me. And I'm realizing how many relationships I let go of. I'm like, wow, it would have been really different if I was still connected with these people. And it really made me feel ill because I'm like, here I am asking for help, and I don't even text these people on the daily anymore. I don't respond to them. I don't have relationships anymore. And if you've been through the Bible, you know how important relationships are. Okay? So that is our brief preview of what Leviticus is to do. Now, if that is important, if that seems like a good pitch, please stick with me for a couple of chapters. What's up, Tanamsu? I see you. I still don't know how to say your name, but brother, you have been one of the most consistent supporters for me, and I just know every time you pop in, my heart gets happy, right? My heart gets happy. Thanks for being here, bro. I see you. So let's go ahead and continue on. I believe I stopped in verse 10. It is an offering. If the offering is a burnt offering for the flock, for either the sheep or the goats, he is to offer a male without defect. He is to slaughter it at the north side of the altar before the Lord. And Aaron's sons, the priest, shall sprinkle blood against it on the altar on all sides. He is to cut it into pieces, and the priest is to arrange them, including the head and the fat, on the burning of the wood that is the altar. He is to wash the inner parts of legs with water, and the priest is to bring all of it and burn it on the altar. It is a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, an aroma pleasing of the Lord. It is an offering to the Lord If the offering of the Lord is a burnt offering of birds, he is to offer a dove or a young pigeon. The priest shall bring it to the altar, wring off the head, and burn it on the altar. Its blood shall be drained out on the side of the altar. He is to remove the crop with its contents and throw it on the east side of the altar where the ashes are. He shall tear it open by the wings and not severing it completely. And then the priest shall burn it on the wood that is the fire of the altar. It's a burnt offering made by the Lord, and aroma pleasing to the Lord. See, asking you guys to come to Bible Talk all of a sudden isn't that bad anymore, right? Like, guys, I don't want to be scared of this. Like, this is our biblical history. This is where we come from. This is where we have been, all right? Let me see. I see some stuff in the chat. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you guys so much. I see the gift. I see all the things. I really, really do appreciate you guys so, so much. But yeah, we're going to continue on. So, when someone brings a grain offering, when someone brings a grain offering to the Lord, he's offering it. His offering is to be a fine flour. He is to pour oil on it, put incense on it, and take it to Aaron's sons, the priest. The priest shall take a handful of fine flour and oil together with all the incense, and burn this as a memorial portion on the altar, an offering made by fire, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The rest of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons. It is the most holy part of offerings made to the Lord by fire. If you bring a grain offering baked in the oven, it is to consist of fine flour, cakes made without yeast and mixed with oil, or wafers made without yeast and spread with oil. If your grain offering is prepared on a griddle, it is to be made with fine flour and mixed with oil and without yeast. Do you have any cooks in the chat? Like, it's so cool seeing that there are like biblical recipes, guys. And I'm like, could you imagine tasting bread that was cooked by God? Like, I'm just trying to have fun because I know Leviticus is dense, guys. Like, I know this is a lot. Thank you for hanging with me. We are going to get through Leviticus. It is dense. It is heavy. I understand that. But there's some moments to just have fun. And I just want you to picture yourself eating some biblical bread, all right? God is so specific with the way that he wanted his food presented to him, whether it's the offering, whether it's the things that are burnt. I'm not sure if you guys are picturing this, but imagine just a barbecue in church. Like, it literally are burnt offerings. So all the meats and stuff you love to eat, those stuff used to be brought as offerings. The bread used to be amazing. And this is the type of life that our early Christians used to live. So I'm going to continue on, okay? Crumble it and pour oil on it. It is a grain offering. If your grain offering is cooked in a pan, it is to be made of fine flour and oil. Bring the grain offering made of these things to the Lord. Present it to the priest, who shall take it to the altar. He shall take out a memorial person for the grain offering and burn it on the altar as an offering made by fire, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The rest of the grain offering belongs to Aaron and his sons. It is the most holy part of the offering made by the Lord by fire. Every grain offering you bring on the Lord must be made without yeast, for you are not to burn any yeast or honey in the offering made to the Lord by fire. Interesting. No honey for God. God is not with the honey. That's just such a random fact. Shout out Hannah, I see you, who just made it in. You may bring them to the Lord as an offering of first fruit, but they are not to be offered on the altar as a pleasing aroma. That's so interesting. I love the smell of honey. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't actually smell honey. It's just super sweet. So maybe that makes sense. I'm just having fun, y'all. Season all your grain offerings with salt. Do not leave the salt of the covenant of your God out of your grain offering. Add salt to all your offerings. All right. He's not down with the honey, but the salt. The salt, guys. All right. For all my chefs out there, you can't forget the salt. What is a meal without the salt? I know we have some older folks that may join into the live. So listen, I know sometimes you got to watch that sodium intake, okay? I know sometimes you got to dial back the salt. But you can't take the salt completely out, okay? You just need a little bit of that salt. Oh my goodness. Continuing on, if you bring a grain offering of first fruits to the Lord, offer crushed heads of new grain roasted in the fire, put oil on the incense on it. It is a grain offering. The priest shall burn the memorial portion, crush the grain, and together with the incense, an offering made to the Lord by fire. I see you guys on Instagram. Love y'all. I'm gonna keep it pushing. It says in chapter 3, we're getting through this, guys. If someone's offering is a fellowship offering, and he offers an animal from the herd, whether male or female, he is to present it before the Lord, an animal without defect. He is to lay his hand on the head of his offering and slaughter it at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's son, the priest, shall sprinkle blood against the altar on all sides. From the fellowship offering, he is to bring sacrifice made by the Lord's fire. All the fat that covers the inner parts or is connected to them, both kidneys with the fat on them near the lions, and the covering of the liver, which he is to remove with the kidneys. Then Aaron's sons are to burn it on the altar on top of the burnt offering, that is the burning of wood, an offering made by fire, aroma pleasing to the Lord. Is anyone disgusted? I know that sometimes when people first read Leviticus, they hear all of this and they're like, oh my gosh, ew. I really want to challenge that, okay? So one thing that the Bible is supposed to do is challenge what we believe. And if you are Christian, if you are faithful, even if you're not faithful, I want you to wrestle with these things. I want you to ask why. I want you to ask, like, was this actually okay? Why did this happen? Because it did. Like, this here, everything I've read is technically holy, okay? We live in a different times now, and we can't let the fact that we live in a different generation change what God said was holy. So I want to challenge you with that. Now, the second thing I also want to point out here that is really cool, because a lot of people struggle with this. They struggle with the fact that they come into church and sometimes it looks like an organized event. They said this is literally entertainment. It's no longer church. This is so put together. There's so many cameras. There's so many this. And I know we're in a different generation, but as we read through this, can you guys see how intentional the early church service was? How intentional and put together it was to be a part of God's kingdom. I actually would not have made the cut as a minister. Like, the amount of things that needed to be perfect, they needed to be cleansed, they needed to come in with certain robes, they needed to come in with a certain sacrifice. Things needed to be done in an exact fashion that I don't think I would have been able to keep up with. Like, I have a faithful heart, I would have tried, but man, I would have been Aaron. Like, I would have been down there with the golden calf. I would have been like, hey guys, listen, I'm just trying to make you happy. God would have had to like do better, bro. So just know that like church is actually supposed to be really specific. So I know a lot of people lose a lot of taste for church because they're like, this is not realistic, all right? This is not what God wanted. But everything that we read at the end of Exodus and now going to Leviticus shows that God actually had a very intentional plan when it came to meeting with Him. You were supposed to walk into that church building with a specific posture, with specific clothes on, with specific things. And this is one of the things I don't think I've ever said out loud. Like, that's a little bit of the reason why I feel I've heard a lot of bad things about like the Catholic denomination, and a lot of people like, oh, like they're not really doing things right, da 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 da. But technically, Old Testament wise, I feel like they're the closest to doing things in this orderly fashion. Like, are there traditions a lot? Like, me looking from the outside, it can seem like a lot, but I feel like walking into one of their services may be the closest people get to experiencing what it would have been like to walk into a church service back in the day. Now, I'm not approving or disapproving of any ministry. I'm just here to be neutral. I'm just saying, when you see this order and way of doing things, when you see people have certain clothes on, when you see that people are trying to be holy, and it makes you uncomfortable, you're like, oh, do they think they're better than me? Do they think this? They may just literally be trying to live out their faith the best way they know how. And that's important to remember, okay? And I know that there's this Christian unity problem. There's this beef between different ministries. Like, you guys do this, you guys do that. All I want to point out is I think every denomination, for the most part, is trying to figure things out. And when you read, you're like, oh, wow, this piece over here does remind me of the Bible. Like, you can't be afraid to say that. Now, I'm going to continue on. I'm not going to get on my soapbox or anything like that. I wanted to point that out, all right? But let's continue on, okay? Boom. How we doing over here? How's my TikTok crew? How's my Instagram crew? Sharat, is that still you for Instagram? Let me see. Oh, it's a little bit frozen. It's all good though. But yeah, shout out to my TikTok people who are still here. Shout out to Kim. I see you. Shout out to Paranga. Shout out to everyone who's been sending me love. We have over 1,000 hearts on TikTok. Thank you so much for the love. Paranga, I know you've been putting in work. Thank you to everyone. And yeah, I see you again. If you guys just want to put where you're from, I want to know where you guys are coming from over there. So just text me. You like, I'm from Texas. I'm from it. Wherever you're from, let me know. I want to know who's in the room. So that will be our chat interaction for the day. But we're going to continue on. I believe we are in chapter or verse 6 of chapter 3. If he offers an animal from the flock as a fellowship offering to the Lord, he is to offer a male or female without defect. If he offers a lamb, he is to present it to the Lord. He is to lay his hand on the head of the offering and slaughter it in front of the tent of meeting. Then Aaron's sons shall sprinkle blood against the altar's sides. Actually, did we read this already? Dun, dun, dun. Sorry, y'all. I'm talking a little too much. We're going to start on chapter 4 again, and we're just going to go from there. It says, "The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, when anyone sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's command, if the anointed priest sins, bringing guilt on the people, he must bring the Lord a young bull without defect as a sin offering for the sin he has committed. He is to present the bull at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. He is to lay his hand on its head and slaughter it before the Lord. Then the anointed priest shall take some of the bull's blood and carry it into the tent of meeting. He is to dip his finger into the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. The priest shall then put some of the blood on the horns of the altar of fragrant incense that is before the Lord in the tent of meeting. The rest of the bull's blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of burnt offering at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat from the bull of the sin offering, the fat that covers the inner parts and is connected to them, both the kidneys with the fat near the loins, and the covering of the liver, which he will remove with the kidneys, just as the fat is removed from the ox and sacrificed as a fellowship offering. Then the priest shall burn them on the altar of burnt offering. But the hide of the bull and all its flesh, as well as the head and legs, the inner parts, and offal, the inner parts and offal. I don't know what that is, but anyway, that is all the rest of the bull. He must take outside the camp to place ceremony. He must take outside the camp to a place ceremonially clean, where the ashes are thrown, and burn it on the wood fire on the ash heap. If the whole Israelite community sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's command, even though the community is unaware of the matter, they are guilty. When they become aware of the sin they committed, the assembly must bring a young bull as a sin offering and present it before the tent of meeting. The elders of the community are to lay their hands on the bull's head before the Lord, and the bull shall be slaughtered before the Lord. Then the anointed priest is to take some of the bull's blood into the tent of meeting. He shall dip his finger into the blood and sprinkle it before the Lord 7 times in front of the curtain. He is to put some of the blood on the horns of the altar. It is before the Lord in the tent of meeting. The rest of the blood he shall pour out at the base of the altar of the burnt offering and the entrance of the tent of meeting. He shall remove all the fat of it and burn it on the altar, and do with this bull just as he did with the bull for the sin offering. In this way the priest will make atonement for them, and they will be forgiven. Then he shall take the bull outside the camp and burn it as he burned the first bull. This is the sin offering for the community. When a leader sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the commands of the Lord his God, he is guilty." Whew. Oh man, Matt, I love you, bro. I'm sorry we haven't met yet. Like, I feel like we haven't had time to chill here in Brazil, but I'm sure that's on the way. I hope to meet you soon, brother. But thank you for the support. I really do appreciate it. I really do. We're gonna continue on, guys. But this actually is a little scary. The reason I paused is I'm just thinking about if I would have made it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how I would have done in old school Christianity. Like, I really don't. And I mean, that for me is scary because, like, I have had the privilege and the blessing of being able to, like, really be here and do some amazing things. I get to be here on the live. I get to read to you guys on Instagram. I really have found my way in life by kind of going this Christianity ministry route. and then to like read like how much weight was put on those leaders back in the day. And I'm sure even today there's still weight, right? Like it's not like that weight is completely gone, but it's just different. And I'm like, would I have even made it back then? So I'm just so grateful that right now is the day that I'm living in. But yeah, amen, guys. Thank you for your support. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making me feel like me reading these little things on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube. Like this is actually worth it, and I'm doing something with my time. It's just really beautiful. That choked me up a little bit. Yeah, amen. So leaders are judged a little bit more harshly, which is it's all good. And yeah, brother, let's try to meet. Work with Wendy. We'll work this out. We'll try to meet sometime, man. Truly. Continue on. When a leader sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the commands of the Lord, he is guilty. When he's made aware of the sin he committed, he must bring an offering, a male goat without defect. He is to lay his hand on the goat's head and slaughter it at the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered before the Lord. It is a sin offering. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of burnt offering and pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He shall burn all the fat on the altar as he burned the fat of the fellowship offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for the man's sin and he will be forgiven. It's a little dark for you guys on Instagram. Let me try to lighten this up for you. I'm not sure. Is this better? No, I'm still pretty dark. Thank you so much, Anil. And I hope the same for you. May God bless you. Thank you for coming through, for supporting, for staying for a bit. I really thank you for that. And for my consistent 2 people here on TikTok, you guys are still here. I know people come in, people come out. I really can't keep track of who's where, but just know that I see you guys. Even if I'm not speaking to you directly, I feel your presence and it keeps me going. That's why I do this. It's why I keep making this happen, even though it's not a big number. I know that things are all right. And thanks for letting me know, Matt. And you guys can hear me okay, right? Everyone can hear me okay? Let me know if I need to change anything with the setup. But we're going to continue on. It says, then the priest shall make some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering and pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He shall burn all the fat on the altar as he burned the fat on the fellowship offering. In this way, the priest shall make atonement for the man's sin and he will be forgiven. If a member of the community sins unintentionally and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's command, he is guilty. When he is made aware of the sin he committed, he must bring as an offering for his sin he committed a female goat without defect. He is to lay his hand on the head of the sin offering and slaughter it at the place of the burnt offering. Then the priest is to take some of the blood with his fingers and put its horns on the altar. And we're going to restart that. Verse 30. Then the priest is to take some of the blood with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar. Oh my goodness. Of burnt offering and pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all the fat, just as the fat is removed from the fellowship offering, and the priest shall burn it on the altar as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. If he brings a lamb as a sin offering, he is to bring a female without defect. He is to lay his hand on the head and slaughter it for sin offering, and place on the burnt offering is slaughtered. Then the priest shall take some of the blood of the sin offering with his finger and put it on the horns of the altar of the burnt offering and pour out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. He shall remove all the fat, just as the fat is removed from the lamb of the fellowship offering, and the priest shall burn it on the altar on top of the offerings made through the Lord by fire. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him for the sin he has committed and forgiven. Guys, I know that this is a lot. Just hang in there, okay? Like, the thing I want you to take in, even though I'm speed reading through this, I wish I could take this a lot slower, but the whole reason for this challenge is to get through the content. And I hope that, oh, I see someone. Oh, look at that. Come on, Twitch. I see you, okay? I'm doing okay. I see you. Thanks for being here. Jenna, it's really cool to see you over there. I don't really get a lot of interaction over there on Twitch, so to actually see someone is just incredible, okay? I see you. But yeah, the thing that I really want to reinforce here is I know that this is a lot and it's so specific. And that is the thing that's so cool. Like, God was so specific of how to live. Like, people are like, God isn't clear. Well, there was a time period when God told us verbatim how to do everything, and we could not keep up. That was the whole thing. That's why we have the New Testament. We could not keep up when God was super clear. We were like, oh my goodness, this is too much. People were slaughtering things all the time. People were messing up all the time. My studies have stopped due to problems. I'm gonna be praying for you, Anil. Absolutely, brother. I'm actually gonna screenshot that so I can remember. Oops. Oh no, no! I turned it off. I made mistakes. All right, we're good. We're back. There we go. Yeah, I'm screenshotting that so I can remember to do that when I finish with this. But I'm gonna remember you, okay? But yeah, we were always like, oh God, I need it to be so clear. If God walked up to you and told you exactly what you need to be doing verbatim right now, I'm sure a lot of you would be intimidated and your faith may stop. We actually saw a similar thing happen with the Israelites. So God had freed them from Egypt in Exodus when we were reading that. I really shouldn't be doing these commentaries because we're going to get so behind on the reading plan. But I can't help it, okay? I need to share these things because I want to make sure that you guys are getting something from this. And this is important. So when the Israelites were freed from Egypt, there was a specific moment when God said, I did not send them down this road because right now their faith is so shaky that if they went down that road and they faced war, they would literally turn back and go to Egypt. Even with everything he did, and we actually see that their faith wavered many, many times after they got freed from Egypt. But God knew exactly. Jenna, I'm not sure if this is you over on Twitch, but I see you, okay? I know that their faith would falter, right? So God sometimes hide things for us because we cannot take it yet. We cannot take the answer, all right? I don't really remember the movie or where it came from, but it's like, I want the truth, and it's you can't handle the truth. I feel like sometimes God does that with us. He's like, you can't handle it right now. And there was a time period where God gave us everything. He's like, just for a moment, I want to let you know how I would do things if it was my way, right? With Adam and Eve, I gave them one rule, and they messed it up. I'm gonna give you guys every rule of how to live perfectly, and you won't be able to do it. It's okay. And I'm literally gonna put this little piece in here. The reason why we have all these offerings is because I know it will mess up. I know for sure that this is going to mess up. So you're going to need a way to be forgiven for the mistakes you're going to make. Literally, the whole beginning of the book of Leviticus, almost all 6 of these chapters, have been about when you make a mistake, this is how you go about getting forgiveness. Even in the Old Testament, we see forgiveness incorporated as one of the very first things he instills in the people. He knows we're going to mess up, guys. Like Twitch, okay? He knows we're going to mess up. Instagram, he knows we're going to mess up. He knows that things are going to happen, and he places things on every single piece of the path so that we may have a way of being forgiven, okay? So that's actually the cool piece of Leviticus. You may get caught up in the fact that there's lambs and goats and bulls being slaughtered and all this. He is giving the people a way of being forgiven. Do not get distracted by the how. Look at the big picture, okay? Forgiveness, grace, a chance to continue to move forward in our faith despite the fact that we mess up. So just keep that in mind. As we continue to read, I know the book is thin, so I'm going to keep saying that, but it's going to be great. All right? So continuing on. Dun, 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 dun. We're going to start at the top of chapter 5. If a person sins because he does not speak up when he hears a public charge to testify regarding something he has seen or learned about, he's held responsible. Or if a person touches anything ceremonially unclean, whether the carcasses of unclean wild animals or unclean livestock or unclean creatures that move along the ground, even though he is unaware of it, he becomes unclean and is guilty. If he touches human uncleanliness, anything that would make him unclean, even though he's unaware of it, whether he learns of it, whenever he learns of it, he will be guilty. Or if a person thoughtlessly takes an oath to do anything, whether good or evil, in a matter one might carelessly swear about it, even though he is unaware of it, in any case where he learns of it, he will be guilty. When anyone is guilty in any of these things in any way, he must confess it in what way he has sinned, and as a penalty for the sin he has committed, he must bring to the Lord a female lamb or goat from a flock as a sin offering, and the priest shall make atonement for him for his sin. If he cannot afford a lamb, he is to bring 2 doves and 2 young pigeons to the Lord as a penalty for his sin, one for a sin offering and the other for burnt offering. Imagine every time you sinned, you had to bring the church $1, right? Like every time you sin, like not even that. Like we're talking about a pigeon. We're talking. Let's say $5. Let's say every time you sin, you had to bring the church $5. Do you know how quickly you'll run out of things, right? Because it's going to be happening all the time. And this is really, I think, the major point of the Old Testament and the biblical story. I think it is to show people, like, I can show you the way to live, but there's so many things that you don't currently have the power to do. So I don't want you to be intimidated about this, and I want you to continue to see the love that is in Christ. And I know that's the future story, but it's so beautiful to see. So continuing on, it says, if he can't afford the land, which you read, he is to bring 2 doves and 2 young pigeons to the Lord as a penalty for a sin, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. He is to bring them to the priest, who shall first offer the one for sin offering. He is to wring its head from its neck, not severing it completely, and is to sprinkle some of the blood as for a sin offering against the side of the altar. The rest of the blood must be drained out at the base of the altar. It is a sin offering. The priest shall then offer the other as a burnt offering, as prescribed, and make atonement for him from the sin he has committed, and he will be forgiven. If, however, he cannot afford 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, he is to bring an offering for his sin, a tenth of an ephah of fine flour for a sin offering. He must not put oil or incense on it, because it is a sin offering. He is to bring it to the priest, who shall take a handful of it as a memorial portion and burn it on the altar on top of the offering made to the Lord by fire. It is a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him for any of these sins he has committed, and he will be forgiven. The rest of the offering will belong to the priest, as in the case of a grain offering. The Lord said to Moses, when a person commits a violation and sins unintentionally in regard to any of the Lord's holy things, he is to bring the Lord as a penalty a ram from the flock, one without defect and of proper value in silver, according to the sanctuary shepherd. It is a guilt offering. He is to make restitution for what he has failed to do in regard to holy things, add a fifth of the value to that, and give it to the priest, who will make atonement for him with the ram as a guilt offering, and he will be forgiven. If a person sins and does what is forbidden in any of the Lord's commands, even though he does not know it, he is guilty and will be held responsible. He is to bring to the priest a guilt offering, a ram from the flock, one without defect and of proper value. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him for the wrong he has committed unintentionally. He will be forgiven. It is a guilt offering. He has been guilty of wrongdoing against the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, if anyone sins and is unfaithful to the Lord by deceiving his neighbor about something entrusted to him, or left in his care, or stolen, or if he cheats him, or if he finds lost property and lies about it, if he swears falsely, or if he commits any such sin that people may do, when he thus sins and becomes guilty, he must return what he has stolen, or be taken by extortion, or has taken by extortion, and what was entrusted to him, or the lost property he found, or whatever he swore falsely about. He must make restitution in full, add a fifth of the value to it, and give it to the owner on the day he presents his guilt offering. And as a penalty, he must bring to the priest, that is the Lord, his guilt offering, a ram from the flock, one without defect or proper value. In this way, the priest will make atonement for him before the Lord, and he will be forgiven from any of those things he did that made him guilty. What's up, guys? I'm not sure who's here, but I'm pretty sure it's my India crew on Instagram. I'm pretty sure there's some new faces here on TikTok. And I'm not sure who that is over on Twitch, but I just want to say I see you guys and I thank you for being here. I think it's Caleb and Kim who are still here. I don't know, but I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you for staying here and just taking in the word. All right, like I know this is dense, but just we're consuming it together. It's not normally the way I would read the Bible, but it's just really cool to get the Bible in its bigger portion, to hear the full biblical story in the order He had intended. So thank you guys for being here to support that. And I see you guys over here too. Thank you so much. Continuing on. The burnt offering, verse 8. Is that where we're at? Yep, we're going to start in verse 8. The Lord said to Moses, give Aaron and his sons this command. These are the regulations for the burnt offering. The burnt offering is to remain on the altar throughout the night till morning, and the fire must be kept burning on the altar. The priest shall then put on his linen clothes with the linen undergarments next to his body, and shall remove the ashes of the burnt offering the fire consumed on the altar and place them beside the altar. Then he is to take off these clothes and put on the others. Carry the ashes outside the camp and to place them to a place that is ceremonially clean. The fire on the altar must be kept burning. The fire on the altar must be kept burning and it must not go out. Every morning the priest is to add firewood and arrange the burnt offering on the fire and burn the fat of the fellowship offerings on it. The fire must be kept burning on the altar continuously. It must not go out. Like, that's quite the sight, right? Like, imagine a fire that just won't stop. Every day you wake up, the fire is still there. I mean, that's pretty cool. These are the regulations of the grain offering Aaron's sons are to bring before the Lord in front of the altar. The priest is to take a handful of fine flour together with all the incense of the grain offering and burn the memorial portion of the altar as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Aaron and his sons shall eat the rest of it, but it is to be eaten without yeast in a holy place. They are to eat in a courtyard of the tent of meeting. It is not to be baked in yeast. I have given it as their share of offerings made to me by fire. Like the sin offering and the guilt offering, it is most holy. Any male descendant of Aaron may eat it. It is his regular share of the offerings made by the Lord by fire for the generations to come. Whatever touches them will become holy. The Lord also said to Moses, this is the offering Aaron and his sons are to bring the Lord on the day he is anointed. A tenth of an ephah of fine flour as a regular grain offering, half of it in the morning, half of it in the evening. Prepare it with oil and on a griddle. Bring it well mixed and present the grain offering broken in pieces as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. The son who is to succeed him as anointed priest shall prepare it. It is the Lord's regular share and is to be burned completely. Every grain offering of a priest shall be burned completely. It must not be eaten. The Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron and his sons, these are the regulations for the sin offering. The sin offering is to be slaughtered before the Lord in the place the burnt offering is slaughtered. It is most holy. The priest who offers it shall eat it. It is eaten in a holy place in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. Whatever touches any of the flesh will become holy. If any of the blood is spattered on the garment, you must wash it in a holy place. The clay pot the meat is cooked in must be broken. But if it is cooked in a bronze pot, the pot is scoured and rinsed with water. Any male in a priest's family may eat it. It is most holy. But any sin offering whose blood is brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement of the holy place must not be eaten. It must be burned. Again, guys, I think it's just so cool that he's really teaching people how to live every day. He said this is the correct way of doing things. It's really clear, and that's what we always ask God, right? Like, please be clear, please be clear. But then you have one of the clearest clearest books in the Bible, and people are like, oh, I don't really like Leviticus. It's so many rules and so many regulations. Like, I hate that God is so judgy. Isn't this exactly what we always ask for? We're like, God, make it clear. And he does so. So I think that's just so interesting. But we continue on in chapter 7. These are the regulations for the guilt offering which is most holy. The guilt offering is to be slaughtered in a place where the burnt offering is slaughtered, and its blood is to be sprinkled against the altar on all sides. All of his fat shall be offered, the fat tail, the fat that covers the inner parts, both the kidneys with the fat on them near the loins, the covering of the liver, which is to be removed with the kidneys. The priest shall burn them on the altar. An offering made by the Lord by fire is a guilt offering. Any male in a priest's family may eat it, but it must be eaten in a holy place, and it must be holy. The same laws apply to both the sin offering and the guilt offering. They both belong to them. The priest who offers a burnt offering for anyone may keep its hide for himself. Every grain offering baked in the oven or cooked in a pan or on a griddle belongs to the priest who offers it. And every grain offering, whether mixed with oil or dry, belongs equally to all the sons of Aaron. These are the regulations of the fellowship offering a person may present the Lord. If he offers it as an expression of thankfulness, then along with his thankful offering, he is to offer cakes of bread made without yeast and mixed with oil, wafers made without yeast, bread with oil, and cakes of fine flour, well kneaded and mixed with oil. Along with his fellowship offering of thanksgiving, he is to present an offering with cakes and bread made with yeast. He is to bring one of each kind of offering in contribution to the Lord. It belongs to the priest who sprinkles blood on the fellowship offering. The meat of his fellowship offering of thanksgiving must be eaten on the day it is offered. He must leave none of it till the morning. If, however, his offering is a result of a vow or a free will offering, the sacrifice shall be eaten on the day he offers it, but anything left over may be eaten on the next day. Any meat of the sacrifice left over till the third day must be burnt up. If any meat of the fellowship offering is to be eaten on the third day, it is to not be accepted. It will not be credited to the one who offered it, for it is impure. The person who eats any of it will be held responsible. Meat that touches anything ceremonially unclean must not be eaten. It must be burnt up. As for any other meat, anyone ceremonially clean may eat it. But if anyone who is unclean eats of any meat of the fellowship offering belonging to the Lord, that person must be cut off from his people. If anyone touches something unclean, whether human uncleanness or unclean animal or any unclean detestable thing, and then eats any of the meat in the fellowship offering belonging to the Lord, that person must be cut off from the people. Like, this is not just like a chill thing. Like, they're very serious about their tradition. So you do kind of have to feel a little bit understanding. Later, we make a lot of fun of the teachers of laws because we seem like, oh, like, how could you not get it? Jesus was right there, bro. Like, how are you so hard-headed? But God was super clear in the laws that he made, and he really began this legalistic culture. And people are people, right? Like, if you grow up in an environment where it's like literally if you do anything wrong, you will be exiled, that gets to you. That gets ingrained in your head. You're like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. And if I don't do this, everything is going to be ruined. And you really start to hold these things heavily. So later, when we see the teachers of the law and these hard-headed people, and you're just like, why don't you get it? Literally from the time that they were a kid, these things are being instilled in them. If you do this, you could be cut off from your people. If you do this, we won't talk to you. If you do this, you have to go to the priest and tell the people exactly what you did. That was wrong. If you do this, it's just thing after thing after thing. So please keep that in mind later on. Let's have love and grace for those who have messed up in the Bible. Although we can get knowingly frustrated with them. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. They did some stupid things, right? But I do want to approach that with understanding, and hopefully that just makes reading it a little bit more realistic of what has actually happened. All right, so we're going to continue on. Verse 22 of chapter 7, eating fat and blood forbidden. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, do not eat any of the fat of cattle, sheep, or goats. The fat of an animal found dead or torn by wild animals must be used for any other purpose, but you must not eat it. Anyone who eats the fat of an animal from which an offering of fire may be Sorry, I got thrown off. Anyone who eats the fat of an animal which an offering of fire may be made to the Lord, cut from. Anyone who eats fat of an animal from which an offering by fire may be made to the Lord must be cut off from his people. And wherever you live, you must not eat any blood of any animal or bird. If anyone eats blood, that person must be cut off from his people. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, anyone who brings a fellowship offering to the Lord is to bring part of his sacrifice to the Lord. With his own hands he is to bring an offering made to the Lord by fire. He is to bring fat together with the breast, and wave the breast before the Lord as a wave offering. The priest shall burn the fat on the altar, but the breast belongs to Aaron and his sons. You are to give the right thigh of your fellowship offering to the priest as a contribution. The son of Aaron who offers the blood and the fat in the fellowship offering shall have the right thigh as his share. From the fellowship offering the Israelites, I have taken the breast that is waved and the thigh that is presented, and has given them to Aaron the priest, his sons, and their regular share from the Israelites. This is the portion of offering made to the Lord by fire that were allotted to Aaron and his sons that day. They were presented to the Lord as priests on the day they were anointed. The Lord commanded that the Israelites give this to them as their regular share for generations to come. This is the original price of being a minister. This is how they got their food. This is how they were supported. Amen to that. Like, make sure our ministers are eating. Amen, right? So that's a pretty cool piece. Verse 37, chapter 7 of Leviticus says, these then are the regulations of the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the ordination offering, and the fellowship offering, which the Lord gave Moses on Mount Sinai, the day he commanded Israelites to bring their offerings to the Lord in the desert of Sinai. The Lord said to Moses, chapter 8, bring Aaron and his sons their garments and anointing oil, the bull offering and sin offering, the two without yeast, and gather an entire assembly at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Moses did as the Lord commanded him, and the assembly gathered at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Moses said to the assembly, this is what the Lord has commanded to be done. Then Moses brought to Aaron and his sons forward to be washed with water. He put the tunic on Aaron, tied the sash around him, clothed him with the robe, and put the ephod on him. He also tied the ephod to him by its skillfully woven waistband, so it fastened on him. He placed the breastpiece on him and put Urim and Thummim in the breastpiece. Then he placed the turban on Aaron's head and set the gold place and the sacred diadem on the front of it, and the Lord commanded Moses. Then Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and everything in it, and so consecrated them. He sprinkled some oil on the altar 7 times, anointing the altar and all its utensils and the basin with its stand to consecrate them. He poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head and anointed him to consecrate him. Then he brought Aaron's sons around them and put headbands on them as the Lord commanded Moses. Now, guys, like, if this seems kind of crazy, like, again, I want you to just know how serious God took approaching the altar with a holiness, approaching the altar, making sure that you are worthy of being in the presence of the Lord, of serving him, of saying his words, because literally you are the mouthpiece of God on earth. And it was so specific. So I don't think we do it that specifically anymore. So you guys should actually be extremely grateful. I know you think some churches overdo it with the way that they put their clothes together. You're like, oh my gosh, you spend so much money on this. Why do you spend your money? Like, God literally cares about these things, that it's repeated many times. Shout out to Bennett and Natasha coming through. I think that's another sister from India. Shout out to Sammy Dews. I think that's from my Boston crew. I love you guys. Thanks for being here. We are in Leviticus, and I'm fast reading, okay? It's not necessarily for consumption. Sometimes I make these little commentaries, but I know that this is a lot to take in. I'm mostly doing this for the challenge of doing the Bible in the week, so forgive me of my pace, but we are going to continue on. He then presented the bull for the sin offering, and Aaron his sons laid their hands on his head. Verse 15, Leviticus chapter 8. It says, Moses slaughtered the bull and took some of the blood with the altar to purify the altar. He poured out the rest of the blood at the base of the altar, so he consecrated it to make atonement for it. Moses also took the fat from around the inner parts, covering the liver and both kidneys and the fat, and burnt it on the altar. The bull with its hide and its flesh and its offering he burned up outside the camp, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then he presented the ram and burnt offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on its head. Then Moses slaughtered the ram and sprinkled the blood against the altar on all sides. He cut the ram into pieces, burnt the head and the pieces of the fat. He washed the inner parts of the legs with water and burnt the whole ram as a burnt offering, aroma pleasing to the Lord, offering the Lord by fire as the Lord commanded Moses. He then presented the other ram and the ram for ordination, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on his head. Moses slaughtered the ram and took some of its blood and put on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Moses also brought Aaron's sons forward and put some of the blood on the lobes of their right ear, and on the thumbs of their right hands, and the big toes of the right feet. Then he sprinkled blood against the altar on the sides. He took the fat tail, and all the fat around the inner parts, covering the liver, the kidneys, their fat, the right thigh. Then he took a basket of bread without yeast, which was before the Lord. He took a cake of bread and one made with oil and a wafer. He put these and the fat portion on the right thigh. He put all these in the hands of Aaron and his sons and waved them before the Lord as a wave offering. Then Moses took them from their hands, burnt them on the altar on top of the burnt offering as an ordination offering, a pleasing aroma, and an offering made to the Lord by fire. He took the breast, Moses' share of the ordination ram, and waved it before the Lord as a wave offering as the Lord commanded Moses. Again, for those of you who just came in and who are joining for the first time, the big thing that we're looking at, even though I'm fast reading, is how cool God is in terms of making sure that the Israelites were clear of how to live daily. It can seem like a lot, and it is a lot, but there's a reason for it. God really wanted to make sure that the Israelites knew the way to live, right? They're starting this brand new life. This is the first time that we have, quote unquote, like an Israelite church, really, and it is a really cool moment. But we're going to continue on. Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood of the altar and sprinkled it on Aaron. Then Moses, did I already read this? No. Then Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood of the altar and sprinkled them on Aaron and his garments and his sons and their garments. So he consecrated Aaron and his garments, his sons and their garments. Moses then said to Aaron and his sons, "Cook the meat at the entrance of the tent of meeting and eat it with the bread from the basket of ordination offerings I commanded, saying, Aaron and his sons are to eat it. Then burn up the rest of the meat and bread. Do not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days until the days of your ordination are completed. For your ordination will last 7 days. What has been done today was commanded by the Lord to make atonement for you. You must stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days and do what the Lord requires, so you will not die. For it's what I have been commanded." So Aaron and his son did everything the Lord commanded through Moses. Continuing on, we are now in chapter 9, guys. We are pushing along. So we're an hour in. Oh man, this pace is crazy. I wish I didn't have to talk so much. Like, I wish that I could just read this, but I can't let you guys be here and not make my little commentary. So I hope you guys are finding this helpful, at least a little bit. But thank you for being here and supporting me, and I really do appreciate you guys who have made the time to be here. So we shall continue on to chapter 9 of the Bible, or chapter 9 of Leviticus, and it says, "On the 8th day, Moses summoned Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said to Aaron, take a bull calf for your sin offerings, a ram for your burnt offering, both without defect, and present them before the Lord. Then say to the Israelites, take a male goat for a sin offering, a calf and a lamb, both a year old without defect, and a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for the fellowship offering, to sacrifice to the Lord, together with a grain offering mixed with oil. For today the Lord will appear to you." Then they took the things Moses commanded to the front of the tent of meeting, and the entire assembly came together and stood near the Lord. Then Moses said, "This is what the Lord commanded you to do, so that the glory of the Lord may appear to you." Moses said to Aaron, "Come to the altar and sacrifice your sin offering and your burnt offering, and make atonement for yourselves and the people. Sacrifice an offering that is for the people and make atonement for them, as the Lord commanded." So Aaron came to the altar and slaughtered the calf as a sin offering for himself, his son, and brought the blood to him. And he dipped his finger into the blood and put it on the horns of the altar. The rest of the blood he poured it on the base of the altar. On the altar he burnt the fat, the kidneys, and the covering of the liver and the sin offering, as the Lord commanded Moses. The flesh and the hide he burned up on the outside of the camp. Then he slaughtered the burnt offering. His sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it against the altar on all sides. him the burnt offering piece, including the head, and he burnt it on the altar. He washed the inner parts, the legs, and he burnt them on top of the burnt offering of the altar. Aaron then brought the offering that was for the people. He took the goat for the people's sin, offered it, and slaughtered it, and offered it as a sin offering as he did with the first one. He brought the burnt offering and offered it in the prescribed way. He also brought the grain offering. He took a handful of it and burnt it on the altar in addition to the morning's burnt offering. He slaughtered the ox and the ram as a fellowship offering for the people. His sons handed him the blood, and he sprinkled it against the altar on all sides. With the fat portion of the ox and the ram, the fat, the tail, the layer of fat, the kidneys, and the covering of the liver, these they laid on their breasts, and then Aaron burnt the fat on the altar. Aaron waved the breast and the right thigh before the Lord as a wave offering as Moses commanded. And then Aaron lifted his hands towards the people and blessed them. And having sacrificed a sin offering, the burnt offering, and the fellowship offering, he stepped down, and Moses and Aaron then went into the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all people. The fire came out from the presence of the Lord. Oh, this is really cool. I'll slow this down. Moses and Aaron then went into the tent of meeting. When they came out, they blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to all people. Fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed the burnt offering, the fat portions on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted for joy and fell face down. This is a really cool moment. So we went through 9 chapters of something so specific. I know that was a struggle. I know a lot of people left. There was a lot of people struggle with Leviticus, but then you get to this moment when you see what it's all for, when people do exactly what God wanted, and he comes down. He has his presence consumed, like he literally eats the food on the altar in a fire. And people see this and they are worshiping. There's shouts of joy. There's this freedom. They are finally free of Edom. They're finally not slaves. They finally have a home. They finally have a place to live, and they are just celebrating. And it is one of the coolest moments, I think, in Leviticus, because you just see that people are like, finally, we are a nation. We have made it. We have finally made it. And it is so cool, and I'm so happy for them. But it continues on in chapter 10. We're in Leviticus. It says, Aaron's sons Nadab and Abihu took their censer, put a fire in them, and added incense. And they offered unauthorized fire for the Lord, contrary to his command. So fire came from the presence of the Lord and consumed them, and they died before the Lord. Moses then said to Aaron, this is what the Lord spoke of when he said, among those who approach me, I will show myself holy in the sight of all people. I will be honored. Aaron remained silent. That's sad. He just lost 2 sons in one day. Moses summoned Mishael and Elzaphan, sons of Aaron's uncle Uzziel, and said to them, come here, carry your cousins outside the camp, away from the sanctuary. So they came and carried them, still in their tunics, outside the camp, as Moses ordered. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons Eleazar and Ithamar, do not let your hair become unkempt. Do not tear your clothes, or you will die, and the Lord will be angry with the whole community. But your relatives, all of the house of Israel, may mourn for those the Lord has destroyed by fire. Do not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting, or you will die, because the Lord's anointing oil is on you. So they did as Moses said. Then the Lord said to Aaron, you and your sons are not to drink wine or other fermented drink whenever you go into the tent of meeting, or you will die. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. You must distinguish between the holy and the common, between the unclean and the clean. You must teach the Israelites all decrees the Lord has given them through Moses. Moses said to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, take the grain offering left over from the offerings made to the Lord by fire, and eat it prepared without yeast besides the altar, for it is most holy. Eat it in a holy place, because it is your share, and your son's share of the offerings made to the Lord by fire, for I have been commanded. But you and your sons and your daughters may eat the breasts that were waved and the dye that has been presented. Actually, I don't know if where are the daughters at this time. We've heard a lot about the sons. I'm not sure if the daughters are in the tent. I'm not sure where the daughters are. I'll have to research that at another time. Anyway, continuing on, eat them in a ceremonially clean place, and they have been given to you and your children as a share of the Israelite fellowship offerings. The dye that was presented and the breast that was waved must be brought with the fat portions of the offerings made by fire to be waved before the Lord as a wave offering. This will be the regular share for you and your children, as the Lord commanded. When Moses inquired about the goat of the sin offering and found that it has been burnt up, he was angry with Eleazar and Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons, and asked, "Why didn't you eat the sin offering in the sanctuary area? It is most holy. It was given to you to take away the guilt of the community by making atonement for them before the Lord. Since its blood was not taken into the holy place, you should have eaten the goat in the sanctuary area, as I commanded." Aaron replied to Moses, "Today they sacrificed their sin offering and they burnt their offering before the Lord. But such things as this has happened to me. Would the Lord have been pleased if I had eaten the sin offering today?" When Moses heard this, he was satisfied. Chapter 11. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Say to the Israelites, of all the animals that live on the land, these are the ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a split hoof completely divided and that chews cud. There are some that only chew the cud or only have a split hoof, but you must not eat them. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a split hoof. It is ceremonially unclean for you. The coney, that is, though it chews cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews cud, does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof completely divided, does not chew cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures living in the waters, of the seas and the streams, you may eat any of that have fins and scales. But all creatures in the sea or streams that do not have fins or scales, whether among the swarming things or among the living things and creatures in the water, you are to detest. Since you are to detest them, you must not eat their meat, and you must detest their carcasses. Anything living in the water that does not have fins and scales, it is to be detestable to you. These are the birds you are to detest and not eat because they are detestable: the eagle, the vulture, the black vulture, the red kite, and any kind of black kite, any kind of raven, the horned owl, the screech owl, the gull, and any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, and any kind of heron, the hopi, or the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are detestable to you. There are, however, some winged creatures that walk on all fours that you may eat, those that have jointed legs for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat any kind of locust, cat, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. But all the winged creatures that have four legs you are to detest. You will make yourself unclean by these. Whoever touches these carcasses will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every animal that has a split hoof, not completely divided, or that does not chew cud is unclean for you. Whoever touches the carcass of any of them will be unclean. Of all the animals that walk on all four, those that walk on their paws are unclean to you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean till evening. Anyone who picks up their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. They are unclean for you. Of the animals that move about on the ground, these are unclean for you: the weasel, the rat, and any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the wall lizard, the skink, or the chameleon. Of all these that move along the ground, these are unclean for you. Whoever touches them when they are dead will be unclean till evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article Whatever its use will be unclean, whether it's made of wood, cloth, hide, or sackcloth. Put it in water, and it will be unclean till the evening, and then it will be clean. If one of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean, and you must break the pot. Any food that could be eaten but has water on it from such a pot is unclean. Any liquid that could be drunk is unclean. Anything from one of their carcass falls and becomes unclean. An oven or cooking pot must be broken up. They are unclean, and you are to regard them as unclean. The spring, however, or a cistern for collecting water remains clean. But anyone who touches one of these carcasses is unclean. If a carcass falls on any of the seeds that are to be planted, they remain clean. But if a carcass has been put on seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean. If an animal that you allow to eat it dies, anyone who touches the carcass will be unclean until the evening. Anyone who eats some of the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till the evening. Anyone who picks up the carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean till evening. Every creature that moves about the ground is detestable. It is not to be eaten. You are not to eat any creature that moves about the ground, whether it moves on its belly, or walks on all fours, or many feet. It is detestable. Do not defile yourself by any of these creatures. Do not make yourself unclean by means of them, or be made unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. Consecrate yourself and be holy, because I am holy. Do not make yourself unclean by any creature that moves along the ground. I am the Lord who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. These are the regulations concerning the animals, the birds, and every living thing that moves in the water, every creature that moves on the ground. You must distinguish between living creatures that may be eaten and those that may not be eaten. Whew. Chapter 12. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, a woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be ceremonially unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her monthly period. On the eighth day, the boy is to be circumcised. Then the woman must wait 33 days to be purified from her bleeding. She must not touch anything sacred or go to the sanctuary until the days of her purification are over. If she gives birth to a daughter for 2 weeks, the woman will be unclean as her period, as during her period. Then she must wait 66 days to be purified from her bleeding. When the days of purification of a son or daughter are over, she is to bring to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting a year-old lamb for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a dove for a sin offering. He shall offer them to the Lord to make atonement for her, and then she will be ceremonially clean from her flow of blood. These are the regulations for women who gives birth to a boy or girl. If she cannot afford a lamb, she is to bring 2 doves and 2 young pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for her, and she will be clean. Continuing on, chapter 13. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when anyone has swelling or a rash or a bright spot on his skin that may become infectious disease, he must be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons who is the priest. The priest is to examine the sore on his skin, and if the hair is sore or has turned white and the deep sore appears to be more than skin deep, it is an infectious skin disease. When the priest examines him, he shall pronounce him ceremonially unclean. If the spot on his skin is white but does not appear to be more than skin deep, and the hair has not turned white, the priest is to put the infected person in isolation for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine him. If he sees that the sore is unchanged or has not spread to the skin, is unchanged and has not spread to the skin, he is to keep him in isolation another 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine him again, and if the sore has faded and has not spread to the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is only a rash. The man must wash his clothes, and he will be clean. But if the rash does spread to his skin after he has shown himself to the priest to be pronounced clean, he must appear to be pronounced clean. He must appear before the priest again. The priest is to examine him, and if the rash has spread to the skin, he shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious disease. If anyone has an infectious skin disease, he must be brought to the priest. The priest is to examine him, and if there is a white swelling in the skin that has turned the hair white, and And if there is raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. If he is not, he is not put him in isolation because he is already unclean. If the disease breaks out all over his skin, and so far the priest can see, it covers all the skin on the affected person from head to foot, the priest is to examine him, and if the disease has covered his whole body, he should pronounce that person clean. Since it has all turned white, he is clean. But whenever raw flesh appears on him, he will be unclean. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he shall pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. He has an infectious disease. Should the raw flesh turn white, he must go to the priest. The priest is to examine him, and if the sores have turned white, the priest shall pronounce the infected person clean, and then he will become clean. When a person has a boil on his skin and it heals, and in a place where the boil was, a white swelling of reddish white, a spot appears, he presents himself to the priest, and the priest is to examine it. If the hair in it has turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. If the infectious skin disease and the disease has broken out where the boil was, but if the priest examines it and there is no white hair in it, and no more than skin deep has faded, the priest is to put him in isolation for 7 days. If it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is infectious. If the spot is unchanged and has not spread, it is only a scar from the boil. The priest shall pronounce him clean. Whenever someone has a burn on his skin and a reddish white spot appears, the raw flesh of the burn, the priest is to examine the spot. If the hair in it has turned white and it appears to be more than skin deep and is an infectious skin disease that has broken out in the burn, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. If an infectious skin disease. But if the priest examines it and there is no white hair or spot, and if it is no more than skin deep and has faded, then the priest is to put him in isolation for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine him, and if the spreading in the skin, and if it is spreading in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is an infectious skin disease. If, however, the spot is unchanged and has not spread in the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest can pronounce him clean. It is only a scar near the burn. If a man or woman has a sore on the head or the chin, the priest is to examine the sore. If it appears to be more than skin deep and the hair is yellow and thin, the priest shall pronounce that person unclean. It is an itch and an infectious disease on the head or chin. But if, when the priest examines the kind of sore, it does not seem to be more than skin deep and there is no black hair in it, the priest is to put the infected person in isolation for 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine the sore. If the itch has not spread, there is no yellow hair in it, and it does not appear to be more than skin deep, he must be shaved except for the diseased area, and the priest is to keep him in isolation for another 7 days. On the seventh day, the priest is to examine the itch, and if it is not spread in the skin and appears no more than skin deep, the priest shall pronounce him clean. He must wash his clothes, and he will be clean. If the itch does not spread after he is pronounced clean, the priest is to examine him, and if the itch has spread in the skin, and the priest does not need to look for yellow hair, the person is unclean. If, however, his judgment is unchanged and the black hair has grown in it, the itch is healed. He is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. When a man or woman has white spots on the skin, the priest is to examine them. If the spots are dull white, it is a harmless rash that has broken out on the skin, the person is clean. When a man has lost his hair and is bald, he is clean. If he has lost his hair from the front of his scalp and has a bald forehead, he is clean. But if he has a reddish white sore on his bald head or forehead, it is an infectious disease breaking out on his head or forehead. The priest is to examine him. If it is swollen or sore and his forehead is reddish white, like an infectious skin disease, the man is diseased and unclean. The priest shall pronounce him unclean because of the sore on his head. The person with such an infectious disease must wear torn clothes, let his hair be unkept, cover the lower part of his face, and cry out, "Unclean, unclean." As long as he has the infection, he remains unclean. He must live alone. He must live outside of the camp. Verse 47. If any clothing is contaminated with mildew, any woolen or linen clothing, any woven or knitted material of lining or wool, or any leather made from leather, or anything made from leather, and if the contamination in the clothing or leather or woven or knitted material or any other leather is a greenish reddish, it is a spreading mildew and must be shown to the priest. The priest is to examine the mildew and isolate the affected article for 7 days. After the seventh day, he is to examine it. If the mildew has spread in the clothing, or woven or knitted material, or the leather, whatever it is a destructive mildew. The article is unclean. You must burn up the clothing with a woven or knitted material, or wool, linen, or any leather that has the contamination on it. Because the mildew is destructive, the article must be burned up. But if the priest examines it and the mildew has not spread in the clothing or woven or knitted material or leather article, he shall order the contaminated article to be washed. Then he is to isolate it for another 7 days. After the affected article has been washed, the priest is to examine it. And if it is mildew and has not changed its appearance, even though it has not spread, it is unclean. Burn it with fire, whether the mildew has affected one side or the other. When the priest examines it, the mildew has faded after the article has been washed, he is to tear the contaminated part out of the clothing or the leather or the woven or knitted material. But if it reappears in clothing or woven or knitted material or in the leather article, it is spreading. Whatever has mildew must be burned with fire. The clothing or woven or knitted material or any leather article that has been washed and is rid of mildew, it must be washed again. It is unclean. These are the regulations concerning the contamination by the mildew in the woven or knitted material. The clothing, woven or knitted material, or any leather article for pronouncing them unclean. All right, guys. We're on to chapter 14. I know. Most of you have left. It's a tough book. I know it is. Guys. But we are going to get through this. Now, I need to figure out how I can charge this other phone because eventually it will die. What's up, Brett? Thanks for coming through. Whew. Chapter 14. The Lord said to Moses, "These are the regulations for the diseased person at the time of his ceremonial cleansing. When he is brought to the priest is to go outside the camp and examine him. If the person has been healed of his infectious skin disease, the priest shall order the 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for one to be cleansed. Then the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed over fresh water in a clay pot. He is then to take a live bird, dip it, and together with the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop, into the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of an infectious disease and pronounce him clean. That is, he is to be released the live bird into the open fields. The person to be cleansed must wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe with water. Then he will be ceremonially clean. After this, he may come into the camp, but he must stay outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, he must shave off all his hair. He must shave his head, his beard, his eyebrows, and the rest of his hair. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. He will be clean. On the 8th day, he must bring 2 male lambs, 1 ewe lamb, and a year old, each without defect, along with 3/10 of an ephah and fine flour mixed with oil grain and 1 log of oil. The priest who pronounces him clean shall present both the one to be cleansed and his offering before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Then the priest is to take one of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering along with the log of oil. He shall wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He is to slaughter the lamb in a holy place where the sin offering and burnt offering are slaughtered. Like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand and the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall then take some of the log oil and pour it on the palm of his left hand, dip his right forefinger into the oil into his palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of it before the Lord 7 times. The priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and the big toe of his right foot, on the top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm, the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed and make atonement for him. The priest is to sacrifice a sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness. After that, the priest shall slaughter a burnt offering and offer it to the altar together with the grain offering and make atonement for him, and he will be clean. If however he is poor and cannot afford these, he must take one male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved and make atonement for him, together with the tenth of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering and a log oil, and 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, which he can afford, one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. On the 8th day he must bring them from his cleansing to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest is to take the lamb for the guilt offering, together with the log of oil, and wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He shall slaughter the lamb, the guilt offering, and take some of the blood, and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest is to pour out some of the oil on the palm of his left hand, and with his right forefinger sprinkle some of the oil from the palm 7 times before the Lord. Some of the oil in his hands, some of the oil in his palm he is to put in the same places he put the blood of the guilt offering, on the lobe of the right ear, the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand, on the big toe of his right foot, and the rest of the oil on the palm. The priest shall put the head of the one cleansed to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then he shall sacrifice the doves and the young pigeons which the person can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. And this way the priest will make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one who is cleansed. These are the regulations for anyone who has an infectious skin disease and who cannot afford the regular offering for his cleansing. We've been live for 90 minutes, guys. It's been a great time. We're going to keep pushing. Verse 33, chapter 14. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when you enter the land of Canaan, which I'm giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mildew in a house in that land, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like mildew in my house. The priest is to order the house to be empty before he goes in to examine the mildew, so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest is to go in and inspect the house. He is to examine the mildew on the walls. If it has a greenish or reddish depressions that appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest shall go out the doorway of the house and close it for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall return and inspect the house. If the mildew has spread on the walls, he is to order the contaminated stones to be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town. He must have all the inside walls of the house scraped, and the material that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside of town. They are to take other stones to be replaced and take new clay and plaster the house. If the mildew reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house scraped and plastered, the priest is to go and examine it. And if the mildew has spread into the house in a destructive mildew, the house is unclean. It must be torn down, its stones and timbers and all the plaster must be taken out of the town to an unclean place. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash his clothes. But if the priest comes to examine it, and the mildew has not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the mildew is gone. To purify the house, he is to take 2 birds and some cedar wood and some scarlet yarn and some hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds over the fresh water in the clay pot. Then he is to take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, the live bird, and dip them into the blood of the dead bird, the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He shall purify the house with the blood bird, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn. Then he is to release the live bird into the open fields outside the town, and this way he shall make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. All this for owning a house is kind of a lot, I'm not going to lie, but I get it. These are the regulations for any infectious skin disease, for an itch, for mildew or clothing in a house, for swelling, a rash, or a bright spot. To determine when something is clean or unclean, these are the regulations for infectious skin diseases or mildew. Again, just notice here that we were so worried about COVID and all these different things. If God was still working in this format, everything would have been straight because He really has a way of separating left from right. It's so cool. Going into chapter 15, it says, "The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when a man has a bodily discharge, the discharge is unclean. Whether it continues flowing from the body or is blocked, it is making him unclean. This is how his discharge will bring uncleanliness. Any bed the man with the discharge lies in will be unclean. Anything he sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches his water, he will be unclean till evening. Whoever sits on anything the man with a discharge set on must wash his clothes and bathe in water, and he will be unclean till evening. Whoever touches a man who has a discharge must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till evening. If a man with discharge spits on someone who is clean, that person must wash his clothes and bathe in water, he is unclean till evening. Everything the man sits on when riding will be unclean, and whoever touches anything that were under him will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up those things must wash his clothes and bathe with water until evening. Anyone the man with a discharge touches without rinsing his hands with water must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till evening. A clay pot that the man touches must be broken. A wooden article is to be rinsed with water. When a man is cleansed from his discharge, he is to count off 7 days for a ceremony of cleansing. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with fresh water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day, he must take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons and come before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. The priest is to sacrifice them, to the one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. In this way, he will make atonement before the Lord for the man because of his discharge. When a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body with water, and he will be unclean till evening. On any clothing or any leather that has semen, it must be washed with water. It will be unclean till evening. When a man lies with a woman and there is an emission of semen, both must bathe with water. They will be unclean till evening. When a woman has a regular flow of blood, the impurity of her monthly period will last 7 days. Anyone who touches her will be unclean until evening. Anything she lies on during her period will be unclean. Anything she sits on will be unclean. Whoever touches her bed must wash his clothes and bathe with water. He will be unclean till evening. Whoever touches anything she sits on must wash his clothes and bathe with water. He is unclean till evening, whether it is in bed or anything she is sitting on. Whether it's her bed or anything she is sitting on, when anyone touches it, he will be unclean till evening. If a man lies with her and her monthly flow touches him, he is unclean for 7 days. Any bed he lies on will be unclean. When a woman has a discharge of blood for many days at a time other than her monthly period, or has a discharge that continues beyond her period, she would be unclean as long as she has a discharge, just as the days of her period. Any bed she lies on while she discharged continue to be unclean in her bed during her monthly period, and anything she sits on will be unclean as during her period. Whoever touches them will be unclean. He must wash his clothes, bathe with water, and he will be unclean till evening. When she is cleansed from her discharge, she must count off 7 days, and after that she will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, she must take 2 doves and 2 young pigeons, bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meeting. The priest is to sacrifice one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. In this way, he will make atonement for her before the Lord for the uncleanness of her discharge. You must keep the Israelites separate from things that make them unclean, so they will not die in their uncleanness for defiling my dwelling place which is among them. These are the regulations for a man with a discharge, and anyone who made unclean by the emission of semen, for a woman in her monthly period, for a man or woman with a discharge, and for a man who lies with a woman who is ceremonially unclean. Whew. How many chapters are in Leviticus? I feel we are coming to a close. Yeah, there's not many left, guys. We just have 5 pages. 27 chapters. So, in just a little bit, we will have completed Leviticus. We can do it. I'm gonna take a really, really quick water break. I'm gonna take this, and it's gonna be good. Chapter 16. The Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the two sons of Aaron who died when they approached the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell your brother Aaron not to come whenever he chooses into the most holy place behind a curtain in front of the atonement cover of the ark, or else he will die, because I appear in the cloud over the atonement cover. This is how Aaron is to enter the sanctuary area. With a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering, he is to put on the sacred linen tunic within the linen undergarments next to his body. He has to tie a linen sash around him and put on a linen turban. These are the sacred garments, so he must bathe himself with water before he puts them on. From the Israelite community, he is to take 2 male goats for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Aaron is to offer a bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household. Then he is to take 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. He is to cast lots for the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and one for the scapegoat. Aaron shall bring the goat whose lot fails to the Lord, and sacrifice it for a sin offering. But the goat chosen by lot as a scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord, to be used to make atonement by sending it into the desert as a scapegoat. Aaron shall bring the bull for his own sin offering to make atonement for himself and his household, and he is to slaughter the bull for his own sin offering. He is to take a censer full of burning coal before the altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of finely ground fragrant incense to take them before the curtain. He is to put the incense on the fire before the Lord, and the smoke of the incense shall conceal the atonement over the cover of the testimony, so that he will not die. He is to take some of the bull's blood with his finger and sprinkle it on front of the atonement cover. Then he shall sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before the atonement cover. He shall then slaughter the goat for the sin offering for the people, and take its blood behind the curtain and do with it as he did with the bull's blood. He shall sprinkle it on the atonement cover and in front of it. In this way he will make atonement for the most holy place, because of the uncleanness and the rebellion of the Israelites, whatever their sins have been. He is to do the same thing for the tent of meeting, which is among them in the midst of uncleanness. No one is to be in the tent of meeting the time Aaron goes in to make atonement for the most holy place, until he comes out having made atonement for himself and his household and the whole community of Israel. Then he shall come out of the altar that is before the Lord and make atonement for it. He shall take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood and put it on all the horns of the altar. He shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times and cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the Israelites. Then he shall come out of the altar that is the Lord and make atonement for it. He shall take some of the bull's blood and some of the goat's blood and put it on all the horns of the altar. He shall sprinkle some of the blood on his finger 7 times to cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the Israelites. When Aaron has finished making the atonement of the most holy place and the tent of meeting of the altar, he shall bring for it a live goat. He is to lay his hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites, all their sins, and put them on the goat's head. He shall send the goat away into the desert in the care of the man appointed for the task. The goat will carry on itself all their sins to a solitary place, and the man shall release it into the desert. Then Aaron is to go into the tent of meeting, to take off the linen garments he put on before entering the most holy place, and he is to leave them there. He shall bathe himself with water in the holy place, and put on his regular garments. Then he shall come out and sacrifice the burnt offering for himself and the burnt offering for the people, to make atonement for himself and the people. He shall also burn the fat of the sin offering on the altar. The man who releases the goat as a scapegoat must wash his clothes and bathe himself into the camp. The bull and the goat on the sin offering, whose blood was brought into the most holy place to make atonement. He must be taken outside the camp, and their hides, flesh and offal are burned up. The man who burns them must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. Afterwards, he may come into the camp. This is a lasting ordinance for you. On the 10th day in the 7th month, you will deny yourself and not do any work, whether native born or alien or living among you, because on this day of atonement will be made for you to cleanse you. Then before the Lord you will be clean from all your sins. It is a Sabbath day of rest. You must deny yourself. It is a lasting ordinance. I love that they keep mentioning this. We do not keep the Sabbath, y'all. Is honestly probably something that we need to work on the most. And I really hope that eventually we get it right. But yeah. Whether native born or alien living among you, because on this day of atonement will be made for you to cleanse you. Then before the Lord you will be clean from all your sins. It is a Sabbath day of rest, and you must deny yourself. It is a lasting ordinance. The priest who is anointed and ordained to succeed his father as a high priest is to make atonement. He is to put the sacred linen garments and make atonement for the most holy place, for the tent of meeting and the altar, for the priests and all the people of the community. This is to be a lasting ordinance on you. Atonement is to be made once a year for all the sins of the Israelites, and it was done as the Lord commanded. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the Israelites, and say to them, this is what the Lord has commanded. Any Israelites who sacrifices an ox, a lamb, or a goat in the camp or outside of it, instead of bringing..." I haven't really highlighted a lot from this book, and I want to make sure I have at least something. And I love that even here, that the Sabbath is really spoken about in such a favorable light. It's like we have to rest, guys. He is to put on a sacred linen garment and to make atonement for the most holy place of the tent of meeting, for the priests and of all the people in the community. This is to be a lasting ordinance for you. Atonement is to be made once a year for all the sins of the Israelites, and it was done as the Lord commanded. Chapter 17. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the Israelites, and say to them, this is what the Lord has commanded. Any Israelites who sacrifices an ox, a lamb, or a goat in the camp outside the tent, outside of it, instead of bringing it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to present it as an offering to the Lord in front of the tabernacle, that man shall be considered guilty of bloodshed. He has shed blood and must be cut off from his people. This is so the Israelites will bring to the Lord the sacrifices they are now making in the open fields. They must bring them to the priest, that is to the Lord, at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and sacrifice them as a fellowship offering. The priest is to sprinkle blood against the altar of the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and burn the fat as an aroma pleasing to the Lord. They must no longer offer any of their sacrifices to the goat idols to whom they prostitute themselves. This is a lasting ordinance for themselves and for generations to come. Say to them, any Israelite or any alien living among them who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to sacrifice to the Lord, the man must be cut off from his people. Any Israelite or any alien living among them who eats any blood, I will set my face against that person who eats blood and will cut him off from his people. For the life of a creature is in the blood, and I have given it to you to make atonement for yourselves at the altar. It is the blood that makes atonements for one's life. Therefore I say to Israelites, none of you may eat blood, nor may a alien among you eat blood. Any Israelite or any alien living among you who hunts any animal or bird that may be eaten must drain out the blood and cover it with earth, because the life of every creature is in its blood. That is why I have said to the Israelites, you must not eat the blood of any creature, because the life of every creature is in its blood. Anyone who eats it must be cut off. Anyone, whether native born or alien, who eats anything found dead or torn by wild animal must wash his clothes and bathe with water. He will be ceremonially clean until evening. Then he will be clean. But if he does not wash his clothes or bathe himself, he will be held responsible. Chapter 18. Unlawful sexual relations. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, I am the Lord your God. You must not do as they do in Egypt, where you used to live. And you must not do as they do in the land of Canaan, where I am bringing you. Do not follow their practices. You must obey my laws and be careful to follow my decrees. I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and laws, for the man who obeys them will live by them. I am the Lord. No one is to approach any close relative to have sexual relations. I am the Lord. Do not dishonor your father by having sexual relations with your mother. She is your mother. Do not have relations with her. Do not have sexual relations with your father's wife. I would dishonor your father. Do not have sexual relations with your sister, either your father's daughter or your mother's daughter, whether she was born in the same house or elsewhere. Do not have sexual relations with your son's daughter or your daughter's daughter. That was dishonored. Do not have sexual relations with the daughters of your father's wife. Born to your father, she is your sister. Do not have sexual relations with your father's sister. She is your father's close relative. Do not have sexual relations with your mother's sister, because she is your mother's close relative. Do not dishonor your father, brother, by approaching his wife to have the sexual relations. She is your aunt. Do not have sexual relations with your daughter-in-law. She is your son's wife. Do not have relations with her. Do not have sexual relations with your brother's wife. That would dishonor your brother. Do not have sexual relations with both a woman and her daughter. Do not have sexual relations with either her son's daughters, or her daughter's daughter. They are close relatives. This is wickedness. Do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife and have sexual relations with her while your wife is living. Do not approach a woman to have sexual relations during the uncleanliness of her monthly period. Do not have sexual relations with your neighbor's wife and defile yourself with her. Do not give any of your children to be sacrificed to Molech. That is such a random switch. That is so random. It's like, don't have sex with this person, don't have sex with this person, don't have sex with this person. Oh, by the way, do not sacrifice your children to Molech, for you must not profane the name of the Lord. I am the Lord. Do not lie with... Is Molech, like, related? I don't know a lot about the other gods, but it's seemingly related. Anyway, do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. This is detestable. Do not have sexual relations with the animal and defile yourself with it. A woman must not present herself to an animal to have sexual relations with it. This is a perversion. Do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, because this is how the nations that I'm going to drive out before you became defiled. Even the land was defiled, so I punished it for your sins, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. But you must keep my decrees and laws. The native-born aliens living among you must not do any of these detestable things, for all these things were done by you, by the people who have lived in the land before you, and the land became defiled. And if you defile the land, it will vomit you out as it vomited out the nations before you. Everyone who does these detestable things, such punishment must be cut off from their people. Keep my requirements and do not follow any of the detestable customs that were practiced before you came, and do not defile yourselves with them. I am the Lord your God. Chapter 19. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the entire assembly of Israel and say to them, be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Each of you must respect his mother and father, and you must observe my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to idols or make gods cast from metal for yourself. I am the Lord your God. When you sacrifice a fellowship offering to the Lord, sacrifice it in such a way that it is accepted on your behalf. It shall be eaten on the day you sacrifice it or on the next day. Anything left over from the third day must be burned up. If any of it is eaten on the third day, it is impure and will not be accepted. Whoever eats it will be held responsible because he has desecrated what is holy to the Lord, and that person must be cut off from his people. When you reap harvest on your land, do not reap the very edges of their field or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the alien. I'm the Lord your God. Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. Do not swear falsely by my name and so profane the name of your God. I'm the Lord. Do not defraud your neighbor or rob him. Do not hold back wages of a hired man overnight. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind, but fear your God. I am the Lord. Do not prefer justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbor fairly. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that will endanger your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. Do not hate your brother in your heart. Rebuke your neighbor frankly, so you will not share his guilt. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am your Lord. Keep my decrees. Do not mate with different kinds of animals. Do not plant your fields in two kinds of seed. Do not wear clothing woven of two kinds of material. If a man sleeps with a woman who is a slave girl promised to another man, but has not been ransomed or given to freedom, there must be due punishment. Yet they are not to be put to death, because she has not been freed. The man, however, must bring a ram to the entrance of the tent of meeting for a guilt offering to the Lord. The ram with the guilt offering, the priest is to make atonement for him before the Lord for the sin he has committed, and his sin will be forgiven. When you enter the land and plant any kind of fruit, regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years you are considered forbidden, and it must not be eaten. When you enter a land and plant any kind of fruit tree, regard its fruit as forbidden. 3 years is a long time. He really protected those fruit trees. He said, when you enter the land and plant any kind of fruit tree, regard its fruit as forbidden. For 3 years you are considered forbidden. It must not be eaten. In the 4th year, all its fruit will be holy, an offering of praise to the Lord. But in the 5th year, you may eat its fruit. In this way, your harvest will be increased. You have to wait 4 years. 4 years to actually enjoy the fruit of a tree. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Huh. Amen. Do not eat any meat with blood still in it. Do not practice divination. Oh, so no more divination. See, this is what's interesting. Like clearly here, there's this chain because we saw clearly in Genesis that Joseph was a big practicer of divination. He literally had a cup of divination. We also see that there's a step away from what used to be okay for sexual relationships because someone, I forget who it was, but I remember someone was like a descendant from like a man and his aunt, and it was someone really. I'm pretty sure it was, who was that? Moses. Was it Moses? It may have been Moses. Maybe it's not Moses. I don't know, but there was someone important where it's like he came from an aunt. I have to go back and watch that. But clearly, there's this change from what was to something new. God has set a new standard, so that's interesting. But yeah, no more divination at this point. Divination is done, and sorcery is done. Do not cut the hair of the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourself. I am the Lord. Do not degrade your daughter by making her a prostitute, or the land will turn to prostitution and be filled with wickedness. Observe my Sabbaths and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums to seek out spirits, for you will be defiled by them. I'm the Lord your God. Rise in the presence of the age and show respect for the heirloom. This is really cool. I didn't know that was actually a law back then. Like when your elders come in, that you actually have to get up and stand. When the alien lives in your land, do not mistreat him. The alien living with you must be treated as one of your native born. Love him as you love yourself. For you were aliens in Egypt. I'm the Lord your God. Do not be dishonest. Do not use dishonest standard when measuring length, weight, or quantity. Use honest scales, honest weights, and honest ephah, and honest hin. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. Keep all my decrees and laws and follow them. I'm the Lord your God. Chapter 20. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, any Israelite or any alien living in Israel who gives any of his children to Molech must be put to death. The people of the community are to stone him. I will set my face against that man, and I will cut him off from his people, for by giving his children to Molech, he has defiled my sanctuary and profaned my holy name. The people of the community close their eyes when that man gives one of his children to Molech, and they fail to put him to death. I will set my face against that man and his family, and will cut them off from their people, both him and all who follow him, in prostituting themselves to Molech. I need to research that. Who is Molech? I will set my face against that person who turns to mediums and spiritists to prostitute themselves by following them. I will cut him off from the people. Consecrate yourself and be holy, because I am the Lord your God. Keep my decrees and follow them. I am the Lord who makes you holy. If anyone curses his father or mother, he must be put to death. He has cursed his father or mother, and his blood will be on his head. If a man commits adultery with another man's wife, with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress must be put to death. If a man sleeps with his father's wife, he has dishonored his father. Both the man and the woman must be put to death. Their blood will be on their own heads. If a man sleeps with his daughter-in-law, both of them must be put to death. What they have done is a perversion. Their blood is on their own heads. If a man lies with a man as one lies with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They must be put to death. Their blood is on their own heads. If a man marries both a woman and her mother, it is wicked. Both he and they must be burned in the fire, so that the will wickedness will be among you. So that the wickedness so that no wickedness will be among you. If a man has sexual relations with an animal, he must be put to death, and he must kill the animal. If a woman approaches the animal to have sexual relations with it, kill both the woman and the animal. They must be put to death. Their blood is on their own heads. If a man marries his sister, the daughter of either his father or mother, and they have sexual relation, it's a disgrace. They must be cut off before the eyes of their people. He has dishonored his sister and will be held responsible. If a man lies with a woman during her monthly period and has sexual relations with her, he has exposed himself to this. He has exposed herself to the source of her flow, and she also uncovered it. Both of them will be cut off from their people. Do not have sexual relations with the sister of either your mother or your father, for that would dishonor your close relative. Both of you will be held responsible. If a man sleeps with his aunt, he has dishonored his uncle. They will be held responsible. They will die childless. If a man marries his brother's wife, it is an act of impurity. He has dishonored his brother. They will be childless. Keep all my decrees and laws and follow them, so that the land where I'm bringing you to live may not vomit you out. You must not live according to the customs of the nations I'm going to drive out before you, because they did all these things. I abhorred them. But I said to you, you will possess the land. I will give it to you as an inheritance, a land flowing with milk and honey. I'm the Lord your God. You must therefore make a distinction between clean and unclean animals, and between unclean and clean birds. Do not defile yourself by any animal or bird, or anything that moves along the ground. Those which I have set apart as unclean for you, you are to be holy to me. You are to be holy to me, because I, the Lord, am holy. I have set you apart from the nations to be my own. A man or woman who is a medium or a spiritist among you must be put to death. You are to stone them. The blood is on their own heads. The Lord said to Moses, chapter 21, speak to the priests and the sons of Aaron, and say to them, a priest must not make himself ceremonially unclean for any of his people who die, except for a close relative, such as a mother or father, his son, his daughter, his brother, or an unmarried sister who is dependent on him, since she has no husband. For her he may make himself unclean. He must not make himself unclean for people related to him by marriage, and so defile himself. Priests must not shave their heads, or shave off any edges of their beards, or cut their bodies. They must be holy to their God, and must not profane the name of the Lord, because they present the offerings made to the Lord by fire, the food of God, the food of their God. They are to be holy. They must not marry women defiled by prostitution or divorced from their husband, because priests are holy to their God. Regard them as holy, because they offer up food to your God. Consider them holy, because I, the Lord, am holy. I who make you holy. If a priest's daughter defiles herself by becoming a prostitute, she disgraces her father. She must be burned in the fire. A high priest, one among his brother who has had anointing oil poured on his head, who has been ordained to wear priestly garments, must not let his hair become unkempt or tear his clothes. He must not enter the place where there is a dead body. He must not make himself unclean, even for his father or mother, nor leave the sanctuary of his God or desecrate it, because he has been dedicated by anointing oil of his God. I am the Lord. The woman he marries must be a virgin. He must not marry a widow, a divorced woman, or a woman defiled by prostitution, but only a virgin from his own people, so he will not defile his offspring among his people. I am the Lord who makes him holy. The Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, for the generations to come, none of your descendants who has a defect may come near to offer food of his God. No man who has any defect may come near. No man who is blind or lame, disfigured or deformed. No man who is crippled foot or hand. No, or who are hunchback or dwarf, or who has any eye defect, or who has festering or running sores or damaged testicles. Okay. Um, da, 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 da. No descendant of Aaron the priest who has any defect is to come near to present the offering made to the Lord by fire. He has a defect. He must not come near to offer the food to his God. He may eat the most holy food of his God, as well as the holy food. Yet because of his defect, he must not go near the curtain or approach the altar, and so desecrate my sanctuary. I'm the Lord who makes them holy. So Moses told this to Aaron and his sons and to all the Israelites. Whew. 22. The Lord said to Moses, speak to Aaron and his sons and to all the Israelites, and say to them, if any of you, either in Israelite or an alien living in Israel presents a gift for a burnt offering to the Lord, either to fulfill a vow or a free will offering, you must present a male without defect from the cattle, sheep, or goat in order that it may be accepted on your behalf. Do not bring anything with a defect, because it will not be accepted on your behalf. When anyone brings from the herd a flock fellowship offering to the Lord to fulfill a special vow or free will offering, it must be without defect or blemish to be acceptable. Do not offer to the Lord the blind, the injured, or the maimed, or anything with warts or festering or running sores. Do not place any of these on the altar as an offering made to the Lord by fire. You may, however, present as a free will offering an ox or a sheep that is deformed or stunted, but it will not be accepted in fulfillment of a vow. You must not offer to the Lord an animal whose testicles are bruised, crushed, torn, or cut. You must not do this in your own hand. You must not accept such animals from the hand of a foreigner or offer them as food of your God. They will not be accepted on your behalf because they are deformed and have defects. The Lord said to Moses, when a calf, a lamb, or a goat is born, it is to remain with its mother for 7 days. From the 8th day on, it is acceptable as an offering made to the Lord by fire. Do not slaughter a cow or a sheep or its young on the same day. You sacrifice a thank offering to the Lord. Sacrifice it in such a way that will be accepted on your behalf. It must be eaten on the same day. Leave none of it till the morning. I am the Lord. Keep my commands and follow them. I am your Lord. Do not profane my holy name. I must be acknowledged as holy by the Israelites. I am the Lord. I'm the Lord who makes you holy and who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. I'm the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed feasts, the appointed feast of the Lord, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies. We're in chapter 23 now, guys. The Sabbath. There are 6 days when you may work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work. Wherever you live is a Sabbath to the Lord. These are the Lord's appointed feasts, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed time. The Lord's Passover begins at twilight on the 14th day of the 4th month. On the 15th day of the month, the Lord's feast of unleavened bread begins. For 7 days you must eat the bread out of the yeast, without yeast. On this first day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. For the 7 days, present an offering made to the Lord by fire. On the 7th day, hold a sacred assembly and do no regular work. The Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you, and you reap a harvest, bring to a priest a sheep of your first grain you harvest. He is to wave the sheep before the Lord, so it will be accepted on your behalf. The priest is to wave it on the day after the Sabbath. On the day you wave the sheep, you must sacrifice as a burnt offering to the Lord a lamb a year old without defect, together with its grain offering of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made to the Lord by fire, a pleasing aroma, and a drink offering of a quarter of a hin of wine. You must not eat any bread, roasted, or new grain until the very day you bring this offering to your Lord. This is to be a lasting ordinance for generations to come wherever you live. From the day after the Sabbath to the day you brought the sheaf of a wave offering, count off 7 full weeks. Count off 50 days up to the day after the 7th Sabbath, and present an offering of new grain to the Lord. From wherever you live, bring 2 loaves made of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour baked with yeast as a wave offering of first fruits to the Lord. Present with this bread 7 male lambs, each a year old, without defects, a young bull, and 2 rams. They will be a burnt offering to the Lord, together with the grain offerings and drink offerings, an offering made by fire, and aroma and pleasing to the Lord. Then sacrifice 1 male goat and a sin offering of 2 lambs, each a year old, for a fellowship offering. The priest is to wave 2 lambs before the Lord as a wave offering, together with the bread of the first fruits. They are a sacred offering to the Lord for the priest. On the same day, you are to proclaim an assembly and do no regular work. This is to be a lasting ordinance for generations to come wherever you live. When you reap harvest of your land, do not reap the very edges of your field or gather gleanings of the harvest. Leave them for the poor and the alien. I'm the Lord your God. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, on the first day of the 7th month, you are to have a day of rest, a sacred assembly, commemorate it with a trumpet blast. Do no regular work, but present an offering made to the Lord by fire. The Lord said to Moses, the 10th day of this 7th month is the day of atonement. Hold a sacred assembly and deny yourself and present an offering made to the Lord by fire. Do no work on that day because it is the day of atonement, when the atonement is made for you because of the Lord your God. Anyone who does not deny himself on that day must be cut off from his people. I will destroy from among his people anyone who does any work on that day. You should do no work at all. This is a lasting ordinance for generations to come. Wherever you live, it is a Sabbath of rest for you. You must deny yourselves from the evening of the 9th day of the month until the following evening. You are to observe the Sabbath. The Lord said to Moses, say to the Israelites, on the 15th day of the 7th month, the Lord's feast of tabernacles begins, and it lasts for 7 days. The first day is a sacred assembly. Do no regular work. For 7 days, the first day is a sacred assembly. Do no regular work. For 7 days, present offerings made to the Lord by fire. And on the 8th day, hold a sacred assembly and present an offering made to the Lord by fire. It is a closing assembly. Do no regular work. These are the Lord's appointed feasts, which you are to proclaim as sacred assemblies for bringing offerings made to the Lord by fire. Burnt offerings are in addition to those for the Lord's Sabbaths, in addition to your gifts, whatever you have vowed, and all the free will offerings you give the Lord. So beginning with the 15th day of the 7th month, after you've gathered the crops and celebrate this festival to the Lord for 7 days, the first day is a day of rest. The 8th day also is a day of rest. On the first day, you are to take the choice fruit from the trees and palm fronds, leafy branches and poplars, and rejoice with the Lord your God for 7 days. Celebrate this as a festival to the Lord for 7 days each year. This is to be a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. Celebrate it in the 7th month. Live in the booth for 7 days. All native-born Israelites are to live in the booths, so your descendants will know that I had the Israelites live in booths when I brought them out of Egypt. I'm the Lord your God. So Moses announced the appointed feast of the Lord. We're really coming close to the close, guys. 4 more chapters. The Lord said to Moses, command the Israelites to bring clear oil of pressed olives for the light, so that the lamps may be kept burning continually. Outside the curtain of the testimony in the tent of meeting area, Aaron is to attend to the lamps before the Lord, before evening till morning continually. This is to be a lasting ordinance for generations to come. The lamps on the pure gold of the lampstand before the Lord must be tended continually. Take fine wine and fine flour and bake 12 loaves of bread, using 2/10 of the ephah for each loaf, and set them in 2 rows, 6 in each row, on the table of pure gold before the Lord. Along each row, put some pure incense as a memorial portion to present the bread to be an offering made to the Lord by fire. This is to be set out before the Lord regularly, Sabbath after Sabbath, on behalf of the Israelites, as a lasting covenant. It belongs to Aaron and his sons, who are to eat it in a holy place, because it is the most holy part of the regular share of offerings made to the Lord by fire. Now the son of an Israelite mother and Egyptian father went out among the Israelites, and a fight broke out. This is interesting. We're now moving into a storytelling portion of Leviticus. I think this is the first moment like this outside of Moses telling Aaron, hey, this is what's about to happen. So it goes on and it says, now the son of an Israelite mother and an Egyptian father went out among the Israelites, and a fight broke out in the camp between him and an Israelite. The son of the Israelite woman blasphemed the name of the Israelite, blasphemed the name with a curse. So they brought him to Moses. His mother's name was Shelomith, the daughter of Dibri the Danite. They put him in custody until the will of the Lord should be made clear to them. Then the Lord said to Moses, take the blasphemer outside the camp. All those who heard him are to lay their hands on his head, and the assembly is to stone him. They say to the Israelites, if anyone curses his God, he will be held responsible. Anyone who blasphemes the name of the Lord will be put to death. The entire assembly must stone him, whether an alien or native born. When he blasphemes the name, he must be put to death. If anyone takes the life of a human being, he must be put to death. If anyone who takes the life of someone's animal must make restitution, life for life. If anyone injures his neighbor, whatever he has done must be done to him, fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he injured the other, so he too must be injured. Whoever kills an animal must make restitution, but whoever kills a man must be put to death. You have the same law for the alien and the native born. I am the Lord your God. Then Moses spoke to the Israelites, and they took the blasphemer outside the camp and stoned him. The Israelites did as the Lord commanded Moses. The Lord said to Moses on Mount Sinai, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when you enter the land I'm going to give you, the land itself must observe the Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years sow your seed, sow your fields, and for 6 years prune your vineyards and gather their crops. But on the 7th year the land established Sabbath rest, a Sabbath to the Lord. Do not sow your fields or prune your vineyards. Do not reap what grows of itself, or harvest grapes of your unattended vines. The land is to have a year of rest. Whatever the land yields during the Sabbath year will be food for you, for yourself, your manservant, your maidservant, the hired worker, and the temporary resident who lives among you, as well as your livestock and the wild animals in your land. Whatever the land produces may be eaten. Count off 7 Sabbaths of a year, 7 times 7 years, so that 7 Sabbaths a year, so that 7 Sabbaths of years amount to a period of 49 years. Then have the trumpet sounded everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month, a day of atonement. Sound the trumpet throughout your land. Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land of all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each one of you is to return to his family property, and each of you to his own clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. Do not sow and do not reap what grows of itself, or harvest the unattended vines, for it is a jubilee, and is to be holy to you. Eat only what is to be taken directly from the fields. This is the year of Jubilee. Everyone is to return to his own property. If you sell land to one of your countrymen or buy any from him, do not take advantage of each other. You are to buy from your countryman on the basis of the number of years since the Jubilee, and he is to sell you on the basis of the number of years left for harvesting the crop. When the years are many, you are to increase the price, and when the years are few, you are to decrease the price, because what he is really selling you is the number of crops. Do not take advantage of each other, but fear your God. I'm your Lord, your God. Follow all my decrees, and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land. The land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and live there safely. You may ask, what will we eat in the seventh year if we do not plant or harvest our crops? I will send you such a blessing in the 6th year that the land will yield enough for 3 years. But while you plant during the 8th year, you will eat from the old crop and continue to eat until the harvest of the 9th year. The land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine and you are but aliens, my tenants. Throughout the country that you have held as a possession, you must provide for redemption of the land. If one of your countrymen becomes poor and sells some of his property, his nearest relative is to come and redeem what his countryman has sold. If, however, a man has no one to redeem it for him, but himself prospers and acquires sufficient means to redeem it, he is to determine the value for the year since he sold it and refund the balance to the man to whom he sold it. He can then go back to his own property. But if he does not acquire the means to repay him, What he sold will remain in possession of the buyer until the year of Jubilee. It will be returned in the Jubilee, and he can go back to his property. If a man sells his house in a walled city, he retains the right of redemption a full year after its sale. During that time, he may redeem it. If it is not redeemed before a full year has passed, the house in the walled city shall belong permanently to the buyer and his descendants. It is not returned in the year of Jubilee. But houses and villages without walls around them are to be considered an open country. They can be redeemed and they are to be returned in the Jubilee. The Levites always have the right to redeem their houses in the Levitical towns which they possess. So the property of the Levites is redeemable, that is a house sold in any town they hold, and it is to be returned in the Jubilee, because the houses in the town of the Levites are their property among the Israelites. But the pasture land belonging to their town must not be sold; it is their permanent possession. If one of your countrymen becomes poor and is unable to support himself among you, help him as you would an alien or a temporary resident, so he can continue to live among you. Do not take interest of any kind from him, but fear your God, so your countrymen may continue to live among you. You must not lend him money at interest or sell him food at a profit. I'm the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan to be your God. If one of your countrymen becomes poor among you and sells himself to you, do not make him work as a slave. He is to be treated as a hired worker or a temporary resident among you. He is to work until the year of Jubilee. Then he and his children are to be released, and he will go back to his own clan and to a property of his forefather, because the Israelites are my servants, of whom I brought out of Egypt. They must not be sold as slaves. Do not rule over them brutally, but fear God. Your male servants and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and your members. Their clans are born in your country, and they will become your property. If you will if you can will them to your children as inherited property, you can make them slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. If an alien or a temporary resident among you becomes rich, and one of your countrymen becomes poor and sells himself to the alien living among you, or to a member of an alien clan, he retains the right of redemption after he has sold himself. One of his relatives may redeem him. An uncle or a cousin or any blood relative in his clan may redeem him. Or if he prospers, he may redeem himself. He and his buyer are to count the time from the year he sold himself up to the year of Jubilee. The price for his release is to be based on a rate paid to a hired man for that number of years. If many years remain, he may pay for his redemption a larger share of the price paid to him. If a few years remain until the year of Jubilee, he is to compute that and pay his redemption accordingly. He is to be treated as a man hired from year to year. You must see to it that his owner does not rule over him ruthlessly. Even if he is not redeemed in any of these ways, he and his children are to be released in the year of Jubilee. For the Israelites belong to me as servants. They are my servants, whom I brought out of Egypt. I'm the Lord your God. Chapter 26, we are moving along. Do not make idols or set up an image or a sacred stone for yourself, and do not place a carved stone in your land to bow down before it. I'm the Lord your God. Observe my Sabbath and have reverence for my sanctuary. I'm the Lord. If you follow my decrees and are careful to obey my commands, I will send you rain in its seasons, and the ground will yield its crops, and its trees of the field their fruit. Your threshing will continue into the grape harvest, and the grape harvest will continue into the planting, and you will eat all the food you want and live in the safety of your land. I will grant peace in the land, and you will lie down, and no one will make you afraid. I will remove savage beasts from the land, and the sword will not pass through your company. You will pursue your enemies, and they will fall by the sword before you. 5 of you will chase 100, and 100 of you will chase 10,000. So that's kind of tough. And then your enemies will fall by the sword before you. I will look on you with favor and make you fruitful and increase your numbers. And I will keep my covenant with you. And you will still be eating last year's harvest when you have to move it out to make room for the new. I will put my dwelling place among you. And I will not abhor you. I will walk among you and be your God, and you will be my people. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, so that you will no longer be slaves to the Egyptians. I broke the bars of your yoke and enabled you to walk with heads held high. Whew! We're getting to some good stuff. Oh, I wish people would have stayed around for this. I don't think people would like see this piece of Leviticus. This is it. Mm. But if you will not listen to me and carry out all these commands, if you reject my decrees and abhor my laws and fail to carry out all my commands and so violate my covenant, then I will do this to you. I will bring upon you sudden terror, wasting diseases, and fever that will destroy your sight and drain away your life. You will plant seed in vain because your enemies will eat it. I will set my face against you, so you will be defeated by your enemies. Those who hate you will rule over you, and you will flee even though when no one is pursuing you. If all of this you will not listen to me, I will punish you for your sins 7 times over. I will break your stubborn pride and make the sky above you like iron and the ground beneath you like bronze. Your strength will be spent in vain because your soil will not yield its crops, nor the trees. If you remain hostile toward me and refuse to listen to me, I will multiply your affliction 7 times over, as your sins deserve. I will send wild animals against you, and they will rob you of your children, destroy your cattle, and make you so few in number that the roads will be deserted. If, in spite of these things, you do not accept my correction but continue to be hostile towards me, I myself will be hostile towards you and will afflict you for your sins 7 times over. I will bring the sword upon you to avenge the breaking of the covenant. When you withdraw into your cities, I will send a plague among you, and you will be given into the enemy of your hands. When you cut off your supply of bread, 10 women will be able to bake your bread in one oven, and they will dole out the bread by weight. You will eat, but you will not be satisfied. If, in spite of this, bro, we're getting into some stuff. I wish y'all would have been around for the end of this book, man. This would have been a cool moment. Like, truly, it would have been a cool moment. In spite of this, if you still do not listen to me but continue to be hostile towards me, in my anger, then in my anger I'll be hostile towards you, and I myself will punish you for your sins 7 times over. You will eat flesh of your sons and the flesh of your daughters. I will destroy your high places and cut down your incense altars and pile your dead bodies on lifeless forms for your idols. I will abhor you. I will turn your cities into ruin and lay waste to your sanctuaries. I will take no delight in the pleasing aromas of your offerings. I will lay waste to your land so that the enemies who live there will be appalled. I will scatter you among the nations. I will draw out my sword and pursue you. Your land will be laid to waste. Your cities will lie in ruin. Then the lands will enjoy its Sabbath years, and then you, in all that time that it lies desolate, you in the country of your enemies. Then the land will rest and enjoy its Sabbath. All the time that lies desolate, the land will have its rest it did not have during the Sabbath you lived in it. As for those who of you who are left, I will make their hearts so fearful in the lands of their enemies that the sounds of a windblown leaf will put them in flight. They will run as though fleeing from the sword, and they will fall even though no one is pursuing them. Oh my gosh. This is mm, 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 mm. He said, if a leaf blows, you will run like a sword is going through the wind. Woo! No curse words needed, no foul language. This is just a legitimate, like, brother, please check yourself. If you won't listen to me, if you won't join me in my blessings, maybe you'll join me in. Whew, goodness, this is good stuff. They will stumble over one another as though fleeing from the sword, even though no one is pursuing them. You will not be able to stand before your enemies. You will perish among the nations. The land of your enemies will devour you. Those of you who are left will waste away in the lands of their enemy because of their sins. Also, because of their father's sins, they will be wasted away. But if they will confess their sins and the sins of their father, their treachery against me and their hostility towards me, which made me hostile towards them, so that I sent them into a land of their enemies, then when their uncircumcised hearts are humbled and they pay for their sin, I will remember my covenant with Jacob and my covenant with Isaac and my covenant with Abraham. I will remember the land. For the land will be deserted by them and will enjoy its Sabbath while it lies desolate without them. They will pay for their sins because they rejected my laws and report my decrees. Yet, in spite of this, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them and abhor them so as to destroy them completely, breaking my covenant with them. I am the Lord their God. But for their sake, I will remember the covenant with their ancestors whom brought out of Egypt in the sight of the Lord and the nations of their God. I am their Lord. These are the decrees, the laws, and the regulations that the Lord established on Mount Sinai between himself and the Israelites through Moses. Chapter 27, final chapter. It says, the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and say to them, if anyone makes a special vow dedicated to dedicated persons to the Lord by giving equivalent values. Set the value of a male between the ages of 20 and 60 at 50 shekels in silver according to the sanctuary shekel. If it is a female, set her value at 30 shekels. If it is a person between the ages of 5 and 20, set the value of a male at 20 shekels and a female at 10 shekels. If a person between 1 month and 5 years, set the value of a male at 5 shekels of silver and that of a female at 3 shekels of silver. If it is a person of 60 years old or more, set the value of a male at 15 shekels and the value of a female at 10 shekels. If anyone making a vow is too poor to pay the specified amount, he is to present the person to the priest, who will set a value for him according to what the man making the vow can afford. If what he vowed is an animal that is acceptable as an offering to the Lord, such as an animal given to the Lord becomes holy, he must not exchange it and substitute for a good one for a bad one, or a bad one for a good one. He should substitute one animal for another. Both it and the substitute become holy. But if what he vowed is ceremonially unclean animal, but that one that is not acceptable as an offering to the Lord, the animal must be presented to the priest, who will judge its quality as good or bad. Whatever value the priest then sets, that it will be. The owner wishes to redeem the animal, he must add a fifth to its value. If a man dedicates his house as something holy to the Lord, the priest will judge its quality as good as bad. Whatever value the priest then sets, so it will remain. If the man who dedicates his house redeems it, he must add a fifth to its value, and the house will again become his. If a man dedicates to the Lord part of his family, part so I'm actually going to pause here because one dream I've had, I'm not sure if I'll get the opportunity to chase this or not. It really just depends on what God said. Is I know that campus students really struggle. My heart really goes out to campus students. And it seems like there's this process of a house being deemed okay to live in. So I'm like, what if I bought houses for campus students to actually live. I think that would be a really cool experience. And it seems like there's this like, hey, priest, I think this house is really good for the campus students, or hey, priest, I think this house is really good for service. What do you think about that? And then if the priest also agrees, then that house is deemed as holy. You know, it can be used for service. So I think that's really cool. If a man dedicates to the Lord part of his family land, its value is to be set according to the amount of seed required for it. 50 shekels of silver to a homer and barley seed. If he dedicates his field during the year of Jubilee, the value that has been set remains. If he dedicates his house after, or dedicates his field after Jubilee, the priest will determine the value according to the number of years remaining to the next Jubilee, and set its value, and its set value will be reduced. If the man who dedicates his field wishes to redeem it, he must add a fifth to its value, and the field will become his again. If, however, he does not redeem the field, or if he has sold it to someone else, it can never be redeemed. When the field is released in Jubilee, it will become holy, like a field devoted to the Lord. It will become property of the priest. If a man dedicates to the Lord a field he has bought, which is not a part of his family land, the priest will determine its value up to the year of Jubilee, and the man must pay its value on that day as something holy to the Lord. In the year of Jubilee, the field will revert to the person from whom he bought it, the ones whose land it was. Every value is set according to the sanctuary shekel, 2 gerahs to a shekel. No one, however, may dedicate the firstborn of an animal, since the firstborn already belongs to the Lord, whether an ox or a sheep, it is the Lord's. If it is one that is unclean, he may buy it back at its set value, adding a fifth to it. If he does not redeem it, it is to be sold at its set value. But nothing that a man owns and devotes to the Lord, whether a man or animal or family man, may be sold or redeemed. Everything so devoted is most holy to the Lord. No person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. He must be put to death. A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from soil or from fruit, from trees, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord. If a man redeems any of his tithe, he must add a fifth of the value. The entire tithe of the flock, every 10th animal that passes under the shepherd rod will be holy to the Lord. He must not pick up the good from the bad or make any substitution. If he does make a substitution, both animals and the substitution become holy and cannot be redeemed. These are the commands the Lord gave Moses on Mount Sinai for the Israelites. And that is the book of Leviticus. Guys, look how much we've read, all right? Look at that. Look at this update, okay? You guys over here, look at this. Look at this update. You guys over here, look at this. This is how much of the Bible we have read live over the past 2.5 days. And this is how much is left, okay? Like this to this. So we got a lot of Bible left to read, and it's going to be a great time. I really would love if you guys keep coming in. For those who are on the Twitch screen, you can now see that we have raised $0 of the daily goal. Same thing for you guys over here. We haven't really raised any money today. So if you want to be helpful, I'm going to ask that you go over to any of my giving platforms. So we have all the traditional ones, so Venmo, CashApp, all that good stuff at Isaiah Young, along with some other things that you can check out. But if that doesn't work for you, please check out my donation site. So that's isaiahyoung.org, where you will find a donation hub for single purchases, but also the donations. Or subscriptions, and I really do hope that you guys sign up for that. So it is the very, very simple ask of just $1 a day. Unfortunately, they won't let me charge $1 a day. So we're doing $7 every 7 days, but it is the same thing, guys. Just $1 a day will make all the difference in the world. So if you have been enjoying the series, please help your boy out. It's going to be really good. I want to transition and just show you guys live that we have now completed another book in the Bible. So we have just finished the book of Leviticus, which is the 20th biggest book, which is like 2.59% of the Bible we just completed in these 3 hours or so that I've been live. We have Numbers coming up next, which is 8th. So it's actually going to be a bigger book than Leviticus, so it's going to take even more time. But that's okay. We're going to get through it, and it's going to be a really good time. I love you guys, and I shall be back again very, very soon. And yes, continue to give, continue to support. Find it over again at isaiahestevony.org. It's going to be a great time. I love you guys and hope to see you soon. Ciao.